Good morning. Hello, hello. I'm in Power Bunny mode. There we are. But yes, good morning. It's good to see you. Nana, Dar, and Juliet. Hello, hello. Yes, today we will be finishing off the first Artemis Fowl book. We got almost exactly halfway through last time, so I'm relatively confident that if we stream for the same amount of time this time, we will finish the book today. Yes, I saw your new headset, Dar. Congratulations, getting new headsets is always good. I have difficulty finding new ones, though, as I have a large head. It's difficult to find one that's comfortable. But yeah, hope you're all doing well today. Let me get some background music in here for us. There we go. Some nice, quiet fantasy tavern music. Gotta get in proper position. Glad it's got good audio. Congrats, Don. But yes, let us begin with Chapter 7, Mulch. Time to introduce a new character to our otherworldly pageant. Well, not strictly speaking a new character. We have encountered him before, in the LEP booking line. On remand for numerous larcenaries, Mulch Diggums, the kleptomaniac dwarf, a dubious individual even by Artemis Fowl standards. As if this account didn't already suffer from an overdose of amoral individuals. Born to a typical dwarf, cavern-dwelling family, Mulch had decided early that mining was not for him, and resolved to put his talents to another use, namely, digging and entering, generally entering mud people's property. Of course, this meant forfeiting his magic. Dwellings were sacred. If you broke that rule, you had to be prepared to accept the consequences. Mulch didn't mind. He didn't care much for magic anyway. There had never been much use for it down in the mines. Things had gone pretty well for a few centuries, and he'd built up quite a lucrative above-ground memorabilia business. That was until he'd tried to sell the Jules Rimet cup to an undercover LEP operative. From then on, his luck had turned, and he'd been arrested over 20 times to date. A total of 300 years in and out of prison. Make model a little bigger on the screen. Very well. Like that. Yes, we are mulch. Mulch indeed. Yes. Good. Alright, fair enough. Thank you for the recommendation. Yes. Mulch had a prodigious appetite for tunneling, and that, unfortunately, is a literal translation. For those unfamiliar with the mechanics of dwarf tunneling, I shall endeavor to explain them as tastefully as possible. Like some members of the reptile family, dwarf males can unhinge their jaws, allowing them to ingest several pounds of earth a second. This material is processed by a super-efficient metabolism, stripped of any useful minerals, and ejected at the other end, as it were. Charming. At present, Mulch was languishing in a stone-walled cell in LEP Central. At least he was trying to project an image of a languishing, unperturbed kind of dwarf. Actually, he was quaking in his steel toe-capped boots. The goblin-slash-dwarf turf war was flaring up at the moment, and some bright spark LEP elf had seen fit to put him in a cell with a gang of psyched-up goblins. An oversight, perhaps, More likely a spot of revenge for trying to pick his arresting officer's pocket in the booking line.
So, dwarf,
Sneered the head honcho goblin, a wart-faced fellow covered in tattoos.
how come you don't chew your way out of here?
Mulch rapped on the walls.
Solid rock.
The goblin laughed.
So what? Can't be any harder than your dwarf skull.
His cronies laughed. So did Mulch. He thought it might be wise. Wrong.
You laughing at me, dwarf?
Mulch stopped laughing.
With you.
He corrected.
I'm laughing with you. That skull joke was pretty funny.
The goblin advanced until his slimy nose was a centimeter from Mulch's own.
You patronizing me, dwarf?
And for those that can't see the book, which is everyone, it's pay-tron-eisen. Comma. Yes, that's how the goblins pronounce patronizing. Patron-eisen. Mrp. Big stone limbs there, child. They have very stretchy tendons that can reach around their prey. Fair enough. I suppose that's a common misconception, I guess. Let's see. Mulch swallowed, calculating. If he unhinged now, he could probably swallow the leader before the others reacted. Still, goblins were murder on the digestion. Very bony. The goblin conjured up a fireball around his fist.
I asked you a question, Stumpy.
Mulch could feel every sweat gland on his body pop into instant overdrive. Dwarves did not like fire. They didn't even like thinking about flames. Unlike the rest of the fairy races, dwarves had no desire to live above ground, too close to the sun. Ironic for someone in the mud people possession liberation business.
No need for that.
He stammered.
I was just trying to be friendly. Friendly,
Scoffed Warface.
Your kind don't know the meaning of the word. Cowardly backstabbers, the lot of you.
Mulch nodded diplomatically.
We have been known to be a bit treacherous. A bit treacherous. My brother Flem was ambushed by a crowd of dwarves disguised as dung heaps. He's still in traction.
Mulch nodded sympathetically.
The old dung heap rules. Disgraceful. One of the reasons I don't associate with the Brotherhood.
Warface twirled the fireball between his fingers.
There are two things under this world that I really despise.
Mulch had a feeling that he was about to find out what they were.
One is a stinking dwarf,
No surprises there.
and the other is a traitor to his own kind. And from what I hear, you fall neatly into both categories.
Mulch smiled weakly.
Just my luck. Luck ain't got nothing to do with it. Fortune delivered you into my hands.
On another day, Mulch might have pointed out that luck and fortune were basically the same thing. Not today.
You like fire, dwarf?
Mulch shook his head. Warface grinned.
Now ain't that a shame? 'Cause any second now I'm going to ram this here fireball down your throat.
The dwarf swallowed dryly. Wasn't it just typical of the dwarf brotherhood? What did dwarfs hate? Fire. Who were the only creatures with the ability to conjure fireballs? Goblins. So, who did the dwarves pick a fight with? A real no-brainer. Yes. Mulch backed up to the wall.
Careful there. We could all go up. Not us.
Warface grinned, snorting the fireball of two elongated nostrils.
Completely fireproof.
Mulch was perfectly aware of what would happen next. He'd seen it too many times in the back alleys. A group of goblins would corner a stray brother dwarf, pin him down, and then the leader would give him the double barrels straight in the face. Warface's nostrils quivered as he prepared to vent the inhaled fireball. Mulch quailed. There was only one chance. The goblins had made a basic mistake. They'd forgotten to pin his arms. The goblin drew a breath through his mouth, then closed it. More exhalation pressure for the fire stream. He tilted his head back, pointing his nose at the dwarf, and let fly. Quick as a flash, Mulch jammed his thumbs up Wartface's nostrils. Disgusting, yes, but definitely better than becoming dwarf kebab. The fireball had nowhere to go. It rebounded on the balls of Mulch's thumbs and ricocheted back into the goblin's head. The tear ducts provided the path of least resistance, so the flames compressed into pressurized streams, erupting just below the goblin's eyes. A sea of flame spread across the cell roof. Mulch withdrew his thumbs and, after a quick wipe, thrust them in his mouth, swallowing the natural balm in his saliva to begin the healing process. Of course, if he'd still had his magic, he would have just wished the scorched digits better. But that was the price he paid for a life of crime. Wartface didn't look so good. Smoke was leaking from every orifice in his head. Flame-proof goblins may be, but the errant fireball had given his tubes a good scouring. He swayed like a strand of seaweed, then collapsed face down on the concrete floor. Something crunched, probably a big goblin nose. The other gang members did not react favorably.
Look what he did to the boss. That stinking stump. Let's fry him.
Mulch backed up even further. He'd been hoping the remaining goblins would lose their nerve once their leader was out of commission. Apparently not. Even though it was most definitely not in his nature, Mulch had no option but to attack. He unhinged his jaw, leapt forward, clamping his teeth around the foremost goblin's head.
Ow, back off!
He shouted around the obstruction in his mouth. No, that's the dwarf.
Back off or your bread gets it.
The others froze, uncertain of their next move. Of course, they'd all seen what dwarf molars could do to a goblin head. Not a pretty sight. Each one popped a fireball in his fist.
I'm warrior, you. You can't get us all, Stumpy.
Mulch resisted the impulse to bite down. It is the strongest of dwarf urges, a genetic memory born from millennia spent tunneling. The fact that the goblin was wriggling slinily didn't help. His options were running out. The gang was advancing, and he was powerless as long as his mouth was full. It was crunch time. Pardon the pun. Suddenly, the cell door clanked open, and what seemed like an entire squadron of officers flooded the confined space. Mulch felt the cold steel of a gun barrel against his temple. "Spit out the prisoner," ordered a voice. Mulch was delighted to comply. A thoroughly slimed goblin collapsed retching on the floor. "You goblins, put him out." One by one, the fireballs were extinguished.
That's not my fault,
Whined Mulch, pointing to the spasming Wartface.
He blew himself up.
The officer holstered his weapon, drawing out a set of cuffs. "I couldn't care less what you do to each other," he said, spinning Mulch and snapping the cuffs on. "If it was up to me, I'd put the whole lot of you in a big room and come back a week later to sluice it out. But Commander Root wants to see you above ground ASAP.
ASAP?
Now, if not sooner." Mulch knew Root. The commander was responsible for several of his government hotel visits. If Julius wanted to see him, it probably wasn't for drinks and a movie.
No, but it's daylight out. I'll burn.
The lab officer laughed. "It ain't daylight where you're going, pal. Where you're going, it ain't anything." Root was waiting for the dwarf inside the time field portal. The portal was yet another of Foley's inventions. Fairies could be introduced to and leave the time field without affecting the altered flow inside the field. This effectively meant that even though it took nearly 6 hours to get Mulch to the surface, he was ejected into the field only moments after Root had the notion to send for him. It was Mulch's first time in a field. He stood watching life proceed at an exaggerated rate outside the shimmering corona. Cars zipped by at impossible speeds, and clouds tumbled across the skyline as though driven by Force 10 gales. Let's see, what voice did I do for Root again?
Yeah, Southern. Mouse, you little reprobate,
Roared Root.
You can take off that suit now. The field is UV filtered, or so I'm told.
The dwarf had been issued a blackout suit at E1. Even though dwarves had thick skins, they were extremely sensitive to sunlight and had a burn time of less than 3 minutes. Mulch peeled off the skin-tight suit.
Nice to see you, Julius. That's Commander Root to you. Commander now, I heard that. Clerical error, was it?
Root's teeth ground his cigar to a pulp.
I don't have time for this impudence, convict. The only reason that my boot is not up your behind right now is that I have a job for you.
Mulch frowned.
Convict? I have a name, you know, Julius.
Root squatted to the dwarf's level.
I don't know what dream world you live in, convict, but in a real world you are a criminal, and it is my job to ensure your life is as unpleasant as possible. So if you're expecting civility just because I've testified against you some 15 times, forget it.
Mulch rubbed his wrists where the handcuffs had left red welts.
Fine, Commander. No need to blow a gasket. I'm not a murderer, you know, just a petty criminal. From what I hear, you nearly made the transformation below in the cells. Not my fault. They attacked me.
Root screwed a fresh cigar into his mouth.
Fine, whatever. Just follow me and don't steal anything. Yes, sir, Commander,
said Mulch innocently. He didn't need to steal anything else. He'd already palmed Root's field access card when the commander had made the mistake of leaning over. They crossed the retrieval perimeter to the avenue.
You see that manor? What manor?
Root rounded on him.
I don't have time for this, convict. Nearly half my time stop has elapsed. Another few hours and one of my best officers will be blue-rinsed.
Mulch shrugged.
None of my concern. I'm just a criminal, remember? And by the way, I know what you want me to do, and the answer is no. I haven't even asked you yet. It's obvious. I'm a housebreaker. That's a house. You can't go in because you'll lose your magic. But my magic is already gone. 2 and 2.
Root spat out the cigar.
Don't you have any civic pride? Our entire way of life is on the line here. Not my way of life. Fairy prison, human prison. It's all the same to me.
The commander thought about it.
Okay, you slime. 50 years off your sentence. I want amnesty. In your dreams, Mulch. Take it or leave it. 75 years in minimum security. You take it or leave it.
Mulch pretended to think. It was all academic, seeing as he intended to escape anyway.
Single cell? Yes, single cell. Now will you do it? Very well, Julius. Only because it's you.
Foley was searching for a matching iris can. Hazel, I think, or perhaps tawny. You really do have stunning eyes, Mr. Mulch.
Thank you, Foley. My mother always said they were my most attractive feature.
Root was pacing the shuttle floor.
You two do realize we're on a deadline here, don't you? Never mind matching the color, just give him a camera.
Foley plucked a lens from its solution with tweezers. This is not just vanity, Commander. The closer the match, the less interference from the actual eye.
Whatever. Just get on with it.
Foley grabbed Mulch's chin, holding him still. There you are. We're with you all the way. Foley twisted a tiny cylinder into the thick tufts of hair growing from Mulch's ear. Wired for sound now, too, in case you need a call for assistance. The dwarf smiled wryly.
Forgive me for not swelling with confidence. I find I've always done better on my own. If you can call 17 convictions doing better,
chuckled Root.
Oh, we have time for jokes now, do we?
Root grabbed him by the shoulder.
You're right. We don't. Let's go.
He dragged Mulch across the grassy verge to a cluster of cherry trees.
I want you to tunnel in there and find out how this Fowl person knows so much about us. Probably some surveillance device. Whatever it is, destroy it. Find Captain Short if possible, and see what you can do for her. If she is dead, at least it will clear the way for a biobomb.
Mulch squinted across the landscape.
I don't like it. What don't you like? The lay of the land. I smell limestone. Solid rock foundation. There might not be a way in.
Foley trotted across.
I've done a scan. The original structure is based totally on rock, but some of the latter extends straight on to clay. The wine cellar in the south wing appears to have a wooden floor. Should be no problem for someone with a mouth like yours.
Mulch decided to take that as a statement of fact rather than an insult. He opened the back flap on his tunneling pants.
Right. Stand back.
Root and the surrounding LEP officers rushed for cover, but Foley, who had never actually seen a dwarf tunneling, decided to stay for a peek.
Good luck, Mulch.
The dwarf unhinged his jaw.
Anchor,
he mumbled, bending over for a launch. The centaur looked around.
Where's everyone?
He never finished that statement because a blob of recently swallowed and even more recently recycled limestone whacked him in the face. By the time he'd cleared his eyes, Mulch had disappeared down a vibrating hole, and there was the sound of hearty laughter shaking the cherry trees. Mulch followed a loamy vein through a volcanic fold in the rock. Nice consistency, not too many loose stones. Plenty of insect life, too. Vital for strong, healthy teeth. A dwarf's most delicate attribute. The first thing a prospective mate looked at. Mulch went low to the limestone, his belly almost scraping the rock. The deeper the tunnel, the less chance of subsidence on the surface. You couldn't be too careful these days, not with motion sensors and landmines. Mud people went to extraordinary lengths to protect their valuables. With good reason, as it happened. Mulch felt a vibration cluster to his left. Rabbits. The dwarf fixed the location in his internal compass. Always useful to know where the local wildlife hung out. He skirted the warren, following the manor foundations around in a long northwesterly loop. Wine cellars weren't easy to locate. Over the centuries, residue seeped through the floor, infusing the land beneath with the wine's personality. This one was somber. Nothing daring here. A touch of fruit, but not enough to lighten the flavor. Definitely an occasion wine on the bottom rack. Mulch burped. That was good clay. The dwarf aimed his scything jaws skyward, punching through the floorboards. He hauled himself through the jagged hole, shaking the last of the recycled mud from his pants. He was in a blessedly dark room, perfect for dwarf vision. His sonar had guided him to an uncovered spot in the floor. 3 feet to the left, he would have emerged in a huge barrel of Italian red. Mulch rehinged his jaw and padded across to the wall. He flattened a conch-like ear to the red brickwork. For a moment he was absolutely still, absorbing the house's vibrations. A lot of low-frequency humming. There was a generator somewhere, and plenty of juice running through the wires. Footsteps, too. Way up, maybe on the 3rd floor, and close by. A crashing sound, metal on concrete. There it was again. Someone was building something, or breaking something down. Something skittered past his foot. Mulch squashed it instinctively. It was a spider. Just a spider.
Sorry, little friend,
he said to the gray smear.
I'm a bit on the jittery side.
The steps were wooden, of course. More than a century old, too, by the smell of them. Steps like that creaked as soon as you looked at them. Better than any pressure pads for giving away intruders. Mulch climbed along the edges, 1 foot in front of the other. Right in by the wall was where the wood had most support and was less likely to creak. This was not as simple as it sounds. Dwarf feet are designed for spade work, not for the delicate intricacies of ballet dancing or balancing on wooden steps. Nonetheless, Mulch reached the door without incident. A couple of minor squeaks, but nothing that would be detectable by human ears or hardware. The door was locked, naturally, but it may as well not have been for all the challenge it presented to a kleptomaniac dwarf. Mulch reached into his beard, plucking out a sturdy hair. Dwarf hair is radically different from the human variety. Mulch's beard and head hair were actually a matrix of antennae that helped him to navigate and avoid danger below ground. Once removed from its pore, the hair immediately stiffened in rapid rigor mortis. Mulch twisted the end in the seconds before it became completely rigid. A perfect pick. One quick jiggle and the lock yielded. Only 2 tumblers. Terrible security. Typical of humans. They never expected an attack from below. Mulch stepped onto a parquet corridor. The whole place smelled of money. He could make a fortune here, if only he had the time. There were cameras just below the architrave. Tastefully done, nestling in the natural shadows, but vigilant nonetheless. Mulch stood for a moment, calculating the system's blind spot. 3 cameras on the corridor, 90-second sweep, no way through.
"You could ask for help,"
said a voice in his ear.
Foley,
Mulch pointed his wired eyeball at the nearest camera.
can you do something about those?
He whispered. The dwarf heard the sound of a keyboard being manipulated, and suddenly his right eye zoomed like a camera lens.
Handy.
Breathed Mulch.
I've got to get me one of those.
Root's voice crackled through the tiny speaker.
"No chance, convict. Government issue. Anyway, what would you do with one in prison? Get a close-up of the other side of your cell?"
You're such a charmer, Julius. What's the matter? Are you jealous because I'm succeeding where you failed?
Root's foul swearing was drowned out by Foley.
"Okay, I've got it. Simple video network. Not even digital. I'm going to broadcast a loop of the last 10 seconds to every camera through our dishes. That should give you a few minutes."
Mulch shuffled uncomfortably.
How long will that take? I'm a bit exposed here, you know.
"It's already started," replied Foley. "So get moving."
Are you sure?
"Of course I'm sure. Elementary electronics. I've been messing with human surveillance since kindergarten. You'll just have to trust me."
I'd rather trust a bunch of humans not to hunt a species to extinction than trust a LEP consult. Consultant, thought Mulch. But aloud he said,
Okay, I am away. Over and out.
He sneaked down the hall. Even his hands were sneaky, patting the air as if he could somehow make himself lighter. Whatever that centaur did must have worked, because there were no agitated mud people racing down the stairs, waving primitive gunpowder weapons. Stairs. Stairs. Mulch had a thing for stairs. They were like pre-dug shafts. He found that, inevitably, the best booty lay at their summit. And what a stairway. Stained oak with the intricate carvings generally associated with either the 18th century or the obscenely rich. Hey, Gardolph, good to see you. Mulch rubbed his finger along an ornate banister. In this case, probably both. Still, no time to moon about. The stairways did not tend to remain deserted for long, especially during a siege. Who could tell how many bloodthirsty troopers waited behind each door, eager for a fairy head to add to their stuffed trophy wall? Mulch climbed carefully, taking nothing for granted. Even solid oak creaked. He stuck to the borders, avoiding the carpet inlay. The dwarf knew from conviction number 8 how easy it was to conceal a pressure pad beneath the deep shag of some antique weave. He reached the landing with his head still attached to his shoulders. But there was another problem, quite literally brewing. Dwarf digestion, due to its accelerated rate, can be quite explosive. The loosely packed soil on the Fowl estate was very well aerated, and a lot of that air had entered Mulch's tubes along with the soil and minerals. Now the air wanted to get out. Dwarf etiquette dictated that gas be passed while still in the tunnel, but Mulch didn't have time for manners. Now he regretted not taking a moment to get rid of the gas while he was in the cellar. The problem with dwarf gas was that it couldn't go up, only down. Imagine, if you will, the catastrophic effects of burping while digesting a mouthful of clay. Total system backup. Not a pretty sight. Thus, dwarf anatomy ensured that all gas was passed below, actually aiding in the expulsion of unwanted clay. Mulch wrapped his arms around his stomach. He'd better get out of the open. A blowout on a landing like this could take out the windows. He shuffled along the corridor, skipping through the first doorway he encountered. More cameras. Quite a lot of them, in fact. Mulch studied the lens's sweep. 4 were surveying the general floor space, but another 3 were fixed.
Foley, you there?
Whispered the dwarf.
No,
The typical sarcastic reply.
I have much better things to do than worry about the collapse of civilization as we know it.
Yes, thank you. Don't let my life being in danger interrupt your merriment.
I'll try not to.
I have a challenge for you.
Foley was instantly interested.
Really? Go on.
Mulch pointed his gaze at the recessed cameras, half hidden in the swirling architrave. Interesting word.
I need to know where those cameras are pointing exactly.
Foley laughed.
That's not a challenge. Those old video systems emit faint ion beams, invisible to the naked eye. Of course, but not with your iris cam.
The hardware in Mulch's eye flickered and sparked.
Ow.
Sorry, small charge.
You could have warned me.
I'll give you a big kiss later, you baby. I thought dwarfs were tough.
We are tough. I'll show you just how tough when I get back.
Root's voice interrupted the posturing.
You won't be showing anyone anything, convict. Except perhaps where the toilet is in your cell. Now, what do you see?
Mulch looked at the room again through his ion-sensitive eye. Each camera was emitting a faint beam, like the last evening's sun rays. The rays pooled on a portrait of Artemis Fowl Sr.
Not behind the picture. Oh, please.
I know that feeling, do I? I know the feeling. Mulch placed his ear against the picture glass. Nothing electrical. Not alarmed then. Just to be sure, he sniffed the frame's edge. No plastic or copper. Wood, steel, and glass. Some lead in the paint. He curled a nail behind the frame and pulled. The picture came away smoothly, hinged on the side, and behind it, a safe.
It's a safe,
said Foley.
I know that, you idiot. I'm trying to concentrate here. If you want to help, tell me the combination.
No problem. Oh, by the way, there's another little shock coming. Maybe the big baby would like to suck his thumb for comfort.
Foley, I'm going to... Ow!
There, that's the x-ray on.
Mulch squinted at the safe. It was incredible. He could see right into the works. Tumblers and catches stood out in shadowy relief. He blew on his hairy fingers and twisted the combination dial. In seconds, the safe lay open before him.
Oh.
He said, disappointed.
What is it?
Nothing, just human currency, nothing of value.
Leave it,
ordered Root.
Try another room. Get going.
Mulch nodded. Another room. Before his time ran out. But something was niggling at him. If this guy was so clever, why did he put the safe behind a painting? Such a cliché, totally against form. No, something wasn't right here. They were being duped somehow. Mulch closed the safe, swinging the portrait back into position. It swung smoothly, weightless on the hinges. Weightless. He swung the picture out again and back in.
Convict, what are you doing?
Shut up, Julius. Quiet a moment, Commander.
Mulch squinted at the frame's profile. A bit thicker than normal. Quite a bit thicker. Even taking the box frame into account. 2 inches. He ran a nail down the heavy cartridge backing and stripped it away to reveal
Another safe.
a smaller one, custom-made, obviously.
Fully, I can't see through this.
Lead lined, you're on your own, burglar boy. Do what you do best.
Typical.
Muttered Mulch, flattening his ear to the cold steel. He twirled the dial experimentally. Nice action. The clicks were muted by the lead. He would have to concentrate. The upside was that something this thin could have only 3 tumblers at most. Mulch held his breath and twisted the dial, 1 cog at a time. To the normal ear, even with amplification, the clicks would have seemed uniform. But to Mulch, each cog had a distinctive signature, and when a ratchet caught, it was so loud as to be deafening.
1.
He breathed.
Hurry it up, convict, your time's running out.
You interrupted to tell me that? I can see now how you made Commander, Julius.
Convict, I'm going to...
But it was no use. Mulch had removed his earpiece, slipping it into his pocket. Now he could devote his full attention to the task at hand.
2.
There was a noise outside in the hall. Someone was coming. About the size of an elephant by the sound of it. No doubt this was the man mountain that had made mincemeat of the retrieval squad. Mulch blinked a bead of sweat from his eye. Concentrate. Concentrate. The cogs clicked by, millimeter by millimeter. Nothing was catching. The floor seemed to be hopping gently, though he could be imagining it. Click, click. Come on. Come on. His fingers were slick with perspiration, the dial slipping between them. Mulch wiped them on his jerkin.
Now, baby, come on, talk to me.
Click. Thunk.
Yes!
Mulch twisted the handle. Nothing. Still an obstruction. He ran a fingertip over the metal face. There, a small irregularity. A micro keyhole. Too small for your average lockpick. Time for a little trick he'd learned in prison. Quickly, though, his stomach was bubbling like stew in the oven, and the footsteps were getting closer. Selecting a sturdy chin hair, Mulch fed it gently into the tiny hole. When the tip reappeared, he pulled the root from his chin. The hair immediately stiffened, retaining the shape of the lock's interior. Mulch held his breath and twisted. Smooth as a goblin's lie, the lock opened. Beautiful. At moments like these, it was almost worth all the jail time. The kleptomaniac dwarf swung back the little door. Beautiful work. Almost worthy of a fairy forge. Light as a wafer. Inside was a small chamber, and in the chamber was...
Oh, gods above.
breathed Mulch. Things had come to a head rather rapidly. The shock that Mulch had experienced communicated itself to his bowels, and they decided the excess air had to go. Mulch knew the symptoms. Jelly legs, bubbling cramps, wobbly behind. In the seconds remaining to him, he snatched the object from the safe and, leaning over, he clasped his knees for support. The constrained wind had built itself up to a mini-cyclone intensity and could not be constrained. And so it exited, rather abrasively, blowing open Mulch's back flap and slamming into the rather large gentleman who had been sneaking up behind him. Nobody expects the dwarf farts. Artemis was glued to the monitors. This was the time when things traditionally went wrong for kidnappers. Third quarter of operations. Having been successful thus far, the abductors tended to relax, light up a few cigarettes, get chatty with their hostages. Next thing they knew, they were flat on their faces with a dozen guns pointed at the backs of their heads. Not Artemis Fowl. He didn't make mistakes. No doubt the fairies were reviewing the tapes of their first negotiating session, searching for anything that would give them a way in. Well, it was there, all right. All they had to do was look. Buried just deep enough to make it look accidental. It was possible that Commander Root would try another ruse. He was a wily one, no doubt about it. One who would not take kindly to being bested by a child. He would bear watching. The mere thought of Root gave Artemis the shivers. He decided to check in again. He inspected the monitors. Juliet was still in the kitchen, scrubbing at the sink, washing the vegetables. Captain Short was on her bunk, quiet as the grave. No more bed banging. Perhaps he had been wrong about her. Perhaps there was no plan. Butler stood at his post outside Holly's cell. Odd, he should have been on his rounds by now. Artemis grabbed a walkie-talkie.
Butler?
Roger base, receiving.
Shouldn't you be on your rounds?
There was a pause. I am, Artemis, patrolling the main landing. Coming up on the safe room. I'm waving at you right now. Artemis glanced at the landing cameras. Deserted, from every angle. Definitely no waving manservant. He studied the monitors, counting under his breath. There, every 10 seconds, a slight jump on every screen.
A loop!
He cried, jumping from his chair.
They're feeding us a loop!
Over the speaker, he could hear Butler's pace quickening to a run. The safe room! Artemis's stomach dropped into queasy hell. Duped. He, Artemis Fowl, had been duped. Even though he'd known it was coming. Inconceivable. It was arrogance that had done it, his own blinding arrogance. And now the entire plan could collapse around his ears. He switched the walkie-talkie to Juliet's band. It was a pity now that he'd taken the house's intercom offline, but it didn't operate on a secure frequency.
Juliet.
Receiving.
Where are you right now? In the kitchen, wrecking my nails on this grater.
Leave it, Juliet. Check on the prisoner.
But Artemis, the carrot sticks will dry out.
Leave it, Juliet, shouted Artemis. Drop everything and check on the prisoner. Juliet obediently dropped everything, including the walkie-talkie. She'd sulk for days now. Never mind. There was no time to worry about a teenage girl's bruised ego. He had more important matters to tend to. Artemis depressed the master switch on the computerized surveillance system. His only chance of purging the loop was a complete reboot. After several agonizing moments of screen snow, the monitors jumped and settled. Things were not as they had seemed only seconds before. There was a grotesque thing in the safe room. It had apparently discovered the secret compartment. Not only that, but it had managed to open the whisper lock. Amazing. Butler had it covered, though. He was sneaking up behind the creature, and any moment now the intruder would find itself nose down in the carpet. Artemis switched his attention to Holly. The elf was back to bed banging, slamming the frame down over and over again as though she could... It hit Artemis then, like a blast from a water cannon. If Holly had somehow smuggled an acorn in here, then 1 square centimeter of ground would be enough. If Juliet left the door open... Juliet! He shouted into the walkie-talkie. Juliet, don't go in there! But it was useless. The girl's walkie-talkie lay buzzing on the kitchen floor, and Artemis could only watch helplessly as Butler's sister strode towards the cell door, muttering about carrots. The safe room, exclaimed Butler, quickening his pace. His instinct was to go in all guns blazing, but training took over. Fairy hardware was most definitely superior to his own, and who knew how many barrels were aimed at the other side of the door right now? No, caution was most definitely the best part of valor in this particular situation. He placed a palm against the wood, feeling for vibration. Nothing. No machinery, then. Butler curled his fingers around the knob, twisting gently. With his other hand, he drew a Sig Sauer automatic from his shoulder holster. No time to fetch the dart rifle. He would have to shoot to kill. The door swung open noiselessly, as Butler knew it would, having oiled every hinge in the house himself. For him was... Well, to be honest, Butler wasn't quite sure what it was. If he didn't know better, that is, at first glance, he would have sworn the thing resembled nothing more than an enormous quivering. Suddenly the thing exploded, jettisoning an amazing amount of tunnel waste directly at the unfortunate manservant. It was like being battered with 100 sledgehammers simultaneously. Butler was lifted bodily and flung against the wall. And as he lay there, consciousness slipping away from him, he prayed that Master Artemis hadn't managed to capture the moment on video. Holly was weakening. The bed frame was nearly twice her body weight, and the ridges were tearing cruel welts in her palms. But she couldn't stop now, not when she was so close. She slammed the post into the concrete again. A cloud of great dust spiraled around her legs. Any second now, Fowl would tumble to her plan, and she'd get the hypodermic treatment again. But until then, she gritted her teeth against the pain, heaving the bed frame to knee height. Then she saw it, a sliver of brown among the gray. Could it be true? Pain forgotten, Captain Short dropped the bed, sinking quickly to her knees. There was indeed a small patch of earth poking through the cement. Holly fumbled the acorn from her boot, clasping it tightly in bloody fingers.
I return you to the earth,
she whispered, worming her fist into the tiny space,
and claim the gift that is my right.
Nothing happened for a heartbeat. Perhaps two. Then Holly felt the magic rush up her arm like a jolt from an electrified troll fence. The shock sent her spinning across the room. For a moment, the world swirled in a disconcerting kaleidoscope of color. But when it settled, Holly was no longer the defeated elf she had been.
Right, Master Fowl,
she grinned, watching the blue sparks of fairy magic seal her wounds.
Let's see what I have to do to get your permission to leave this place. Drop everything,
sulked Juliet.
Drop everything and check the prisoner.
She flicked blonde tresses expertly over his shoulder.
He must think I'm his maid or something.
She hammered on the cell door with the flat of her hand.
I'm coming in now, fairy girl, so if you're doing anything embarrassing, please stop.
Juliet punched the combination into the keypad.
And no, I don't have your vegetables or your washed fruit. It's not my fault. Artemis insisted I come right down.
Juliet stopped talking, because there was nobody listening. She was preaching to an empty room. She waited for her brain to pass on an explanation. Nothing came. Eventually, the notion to take another look filtered down. She took a tentative step into the concrete cube. Nothing. Only a slight shimmering in the shadows, like a mist. It was probably these stupid glasses. How are you supposed to see anything wearing mirrored sunglasses underground? And they were so 90s. They weren't even retro yet. Juliet glanced guiltily at the monitor. Just a quick peek. What harm could it do? She whipped up the frame, sending her eyeballs spinning around the room. In that instant, a figure materialized before her, just stepped out of the air. It was Holly. She was smiling.
Oh, it's you. How did you...
The fairy interrupted with a wave of her hand.
Why don't you take off those glasses, Juliet? They really don't suit you.
She's right, thought Juliet. What a lovely voice. Like a choir all on its own. How could you argue with a voice like that?
Sure, caveman glasses off. Cool voice, by the way. Do, re, mi, and all that.
Holly decided not to try deciphering Juliet's comments. It was hard enough when the girl was in full control of her brain.
Now, a simple question. No problem.
What a great idea.
How many people in the house?
Juliet thought. 1 and 1 and 1. And another one? No, Miss Fowl wasn't there.
3,
she said finally.
Me and Butler and, of course, Artemis. Mrs. Fowl was here, but she went bye-bye. Then she went bye-bye.
Juliet giggled. She'd made a joke. A good one, too. Holly drew a breath to ask for clarification, then thought better of it. A mistake, as it turned out.
Has anyone else been here? Anyone like me?
Juliet chewed her lip.
There was one little man in a uniform like yours. Not cute, though, not one bit. Just shouted and smoked a smelly cigar. Terrible complexion. Red as a tomato.
Holly almost smiled. Root had come himself. No doubt the negotiations had been disastrous.
No one else? Not that I know of. You see that man again, tell him to lay off the red meat. He's just a coronary waiting to happen.
Holly swallowed a grin. Juliet was the only human she knew who was probably more lucid under the mesmer.
Okay, I'll tell him. Now, Juliet, I want you to stay in my room, and no matter what you hear, don't come out.
Juliet frowned.
This room? It's so boring. No TV or anything. Can't I go sleep in the lounge? No, you have to stay here. Anyway, they've just installed a wall television. Cinema size. Wrestling 24 hours a day.
Juliet almost fainted with pleasure. She ran into the cell, gasping as her imagination supplied the pictures. Holly shook her head. Well, she thought, at least one of us is happy. Mulch gave his rear end a shake to dislodge any clumps of earth. If only his mother could see him now, spraying mud on the mud people. That was irony, or something like it. Mulch had never been big on vocabulary in school. That or poetry. He'd never seen the point. Down the mines, there were only 2 phrases of any importance. Look, gold, and cave in, everybody out. No hidden meanings there, or rhymes. The dwarf buttoned his back flap, which had been blasted open by the gale emanating from his nether regions. Time to make a run for it. Whatever hope he'd had of escaping undiscovered had been blown. Literally. Mulch retrieved his earpiece, screwing it firmly into his ear. Well, you never knew. Even the LEP might prove useful.
And when I get my hands on you, convict, you'll wish you stayed down in those mines.
Mulch sighed. Oh well, nothing new there then. Clasping the safe's treasure tightly in his fist, the dwarf returned to retrace his steps. To his utter amazement, there was a human entangled in the banisters. Mulch was not one bit surprised that his recyclings had managed to hurl the elephantine mudman several yards through the air. Dwarf gas had been known to cause avalanches in the Alps. What did surprise him was the fact that the man had managed to get so close to him in the first place.
You're good,
said Mulch, wagging a finger at the unconscious bodyguard.
But nobody takes a body blow from Mulch Diggums and stays on their feet.
The mudman stirred, the whites of his eyes showing beneath fluttering lids. Root's voice crackled in the dwarf's ears.
Get a move on, Mulch Diggums, before that mudman gets up and rearranges your innards. He took out an entire retrieval team, you know.
Mulch swallowed, his bravado suddenly deserting him.
An entire retrieval team? Maybe I should get back underground, for the good of the mission.
Skipping hurriedly around the groaning bodyguard, Mulch took the steps 2 at a time. No point in worrying about creaking stairs when you've just sent the intestinal equivalent of Hurricane Hal scurrying around the corridors. He'd almost reached the cellar door when a figure shimmered into focus before him. Mulch recognized it as his arresting officer from the Renaissance Master's smuggling case.
Captain Short? Mulch, I wasn't expecting to see you.
The dwarf shrugged.
Julia's had a dirty job. Someone had to do it. I get it.
Holly nodded.
You've already lost your magic. Smart. What did you find out?
Mulch showed Holly his find.
This was in his safe.
A copy of the book,
gasped Holly.
No wonder we're in this fix. We're playing right into his hands all along.
Mulch opened the cellar door.
Shall we? I can't. I'm under eyeball orders not to leave the house. You magical types and your rituals. You have no idea how liberating it is to be rid of all that mumbo-jumbo.
A series of sharp noises drifted down from the upper landing. It sounded like a troll thrashing around in a crystal emporium.
We can debate ethics at a later date. Right now, I suggest we make ourselves scarce.
Mulch nodded.
Agreed. This guy took out an entire retrieval squad, apparently.
Holly paused, half-shielded.
An entire squad? Fully equipped? I wonder.
She continued her fade out, and the last thing to go was her widening grin. Mulch was tempted to hang around. There weren't many things more fun to watch than a heavily armed recon officer going to town on a bunch of unsuspecting humans. By the time Captain Short got through with this Fowl character, he'd be begging her to get out of his manor. The Fowl character in question was watching it all from the surveillance room. There was no denying it. Things were not good. Not good at all. And certainly not irredeemable. There was still hope. Artemis cataloged the events of the last few minutes. The manor's security had been compromised. The safe room was in shambles, blown apart by some sort of fairy flatulence. Butler lay unconscious, possibly paralyzed by the same gaseous anomaly. His hostage was loose in the house. Her fairy powers restored to her. There was an unsightly creature in leather pants burrowing holes beneath the foundations, with no apparent regard for the fairy commandments. And the people had retrieved a copy of the book. One of several copies, as it happened, including one on disc in a Swiss vault. Artemis's finger combed an errant strand of dark hair. He would have to dig very deep to uncover the good in this particular scenario. He took several deep breaths, finding his chi as Butler had taught him. After several moments' contemplation, he realized that these factors meant little to the overall strategies of both sides. Captain Short was still trapped in the manor, and the time stoppage period was running out. Soon, the Lep would have no option but to launch their biobomb, and that was when Artemis Fowl would unveil his coup de grace. Of course, the whole thing depended on Commander Root. If Root was as intellectually challenged as he looked, it was quite possible the entire scheme would collapse around his ears. Artemis hoped fervently that someone on the fairy team had the wit to spot the blunder he'd made during the negotiation section. Mulch unbuttoned his back flap. Time to suck some dirt, as they said down in the mines. The trouble with dwarf tunnels was that they were self-sealing, so that if you had to go back the way you came, there was a whole new burrow to be excavated. Some dwarves retraced their steps exactly, chewing through the less compact, pre-digested dirt. Mulch preferred to dig a fresh tunnel. For some reason, eating the same dirt twice didn't appeal to him. Unhinging his jaw, the dwarf pointed himself torpedo-like through the hole in the floorboards. His heart calmed immediately as the scent of minerals filled his nostrils. Safe. He was safe. Nothing could catch a dwarf underground, not even a Scythian rockworm. That was, of course, if he managed to get underground. 10 very powerful fingers gripped Mulch by the ankles. This just wasn't the dwarf's day. First, Wartface, now this homicidal human. Some people never learn, usually mud people.
Egg up,
He mumbled, unhinged jaw flapping uselessly. Not a chance, came the reply. The only way you're leaving this house is in a body bag. Mulch could feel himself being dragged backward. This human was strong. There weren't many creatures that could dislodge a dwarf with a grip on something. He scrambled in the dirt, cramming handfuls of wine-impregnated clay into his cavernous mouth. There was only one chance. Come on, you little goblin, out of there. Goblin? Mulch would have been indignant had he not been chewing clay to eject at his enemy. The human stopped talking. Possibly he had noticed the flap, and probably what was behind it. No doubt what had happened in the safe room was coming back to him. Oh. What would have followed the "oh" is anyone's guess, but I'd be willing to bet that it wouldn't have been "dearie me." As it happened, Butler never had time to finish his expletive, because he wisely chose that moment to relinquish his grip. A wise choice indeed, because it coincided with the instant Mulch decided to launch his earthen offense. A lump of compacted clay sped like a cannon directly at the spot where Butler's head had been barely a second previously. Had it still occupied that space, the impact would have separated it from Butler's shoulders. An ignoble end for a bodyguard of his caliber. As it was, the soggy missile barely grazed by his ear. Nevertheless, the force was sufficient to spin Butler like an ice skater, landing him on his rump for the second time in as many minutes. By the time his vision had settled, the dwarf had disappeared into a maelstrom of churning muck. Butler decided not to attempt a pursuit. Dying below ground was not very high on his things-to-do list. But there will be another day, Fairy, he thought grimly. And there was to be, but that's another story. Mulch's momentum propelled him underground. He'd gone several yards along the loamy vein before he realized no one was following. Once the taste of earth had settled his heart rate, he decided it was time to implement his escape plan. The dwarf altered his course, chewing his way towards the rabbit warren he'd noted earlier. With any luck, the centaur hadn't run a seismology test on the manor grounds, or his ruse might be discovered. He'd just have to bank on the fact that they had more important things to worry about than a missing prisoner. There shouldn't be any problem deceiving Julius, but the centaur, he was a smart one. Mulch's internal compass steered him true, and within minutes he could feel the gentle vibrations of the rabbits loping along their tunnels. From here on, timing was crucial if the illusion was to be effective. He slowed his digging rate, poking the soft clay gently until his fingers breached the tunnel wall. Mulch was careful to look the other way, because whatever he saw would be showing up on the view screen back in LEP HQ. Laying his fingers on the tunnel floor like an upturned spider, Mulch waited. It didn't take long. In seconds, he felt the rhythmic thump of an approaching rabbit. The instant the animal's hind legs brushed the trap, he tightened his powerful digits around its neck. The poor animal never had a chance. Sorry, friend, thought the dwarf. If there was any other way. Pulling the rabbit's body through the hole, Mulch rehinged his jaw and began screaming.
Cave in! Cave in! Help! Help!
Now for the tricky bit. With one hand, he agitated the surrounding earth, bringing showers of it crumbling around his own head. With the other hand, he popped the iris cam out of his left eye and slid it into the rabbit's. Given the almost total darkness and the landfall confusion, it should be almost impossible to spot the switch.
Julius, please help me!
Mulch, what's happening? What's your status?
What's my status? Thought the dwarf incredulously. Even in times of supposed crisis, the commander couldn't abandon his precious protocol. The dwarf dragged his final scream out, petering off to a gargling rattle. A bit melodramatic, perhaps, but Mulch never could resist theatrics. With a last regretful glance at the dying animal, he unhinged his jaw and finned off to the southeast. Freedom beckoned. Chapter 8. Troll. Root leaned forward, roaring into the microphone.
Mulch, what's happening? What's your status?
Foley was tapping a keyboard furiously.
We've lost audio. Motion 2.
Mulch, talk to me, damn it.
I'm running a scanner on his vitals. Whoa.
What is it?
His heart's gone crazy, beating like a rabbit.
A rabbit?
No, wait, it's...
What?
Breathed the commander, terribly afraid that he already knew. Foley leaned back in his chair.
It stopped. His heartbeat has stopped.
Are you sure?
The monitors don't lie. All vitals can be read through the iris cam. Not a peep. And he's gone.
Root couldn't believe it. Mulch Diggums, one of life's constants. Gone? It couldn't be true.
He did it too, you know, Foley. Recovered a copy of the book, no less. And he confirmed Short was alive.
Foley's wide brow creased for an instant.
It's just that...
What?
Said Root, suspicion aroused.
Well, for a moment there, just before the end, his heart rate seemed abnormally fast.
Maybe it was a malfunction.
The centaur was unconvinced.
I doubt it. My bugs don't have bugs.
What other explanation could there be? You still have visuals, don't you?
Yep, through dead eyes, no doubt about it. Not a spark of electricity in that brain. The camera's running on its own battery.
Well, that's it then. No other explanation.
Foley nodded.
It would seem that way. Unless... No, it's too fantastic.
This is Mulch Diggums we're talking about here. Nothing is too fantastic.
Foley opened his mouth to voice his incredible theory, but before he could speak, the shuttle's bay door slid open. "We have him," said a triumphant voice. "Yes," agreed a second. "Fowl has made a mistake." Root swiveled in his chair. He was arguing cumulus, the so-called behavioral analysis.
We finally decided to earn our retainers, have we?
But the professors were not so easily intimidated, united by excitement. Cumulus even had the temerity to wave Root's sarcasm aside. This, more than anything else, made the commander sit up and take notice. Argon brushed past Foley, pressing a laser disc into the console's player. Artemis Fowl's face appeared, as seen through Root's iris scan.
We'll be in touch.
We'll be in touch,
Said the commander's recorded voice.
Don't worry, I'll see myself out.
Fowl's face disappeared momentarily as he rose from his chair. Root lifted his gaze in time for the next chilling statement.
You do that. But remember this, none of your race has permission to enter here while I'm alive.
Argon pressed the pause button triumphantly.
There, you see?
Root's complexion lost any final traces of pallor.
There? There what? What do I see?
Cumulus tutted, as one would to a slow child. A mistake, in retrospect. The commander had him by the pointy beard and under his second.
Now,
He said, his voice deceptively calm.
pretend we're pushed for time here and explain it to me without any attitude or comments.
The humans said we couldn't enter while he was alive, squeaked Cumulus.
So?
Argon took up the account. So?
So, if we can't go in while he's alive,
Root drew in a sharp breath.
then we can go in when he's dead.
Cumulus and Argon beamed.
Exactly.
They said in perfect unison. Root scratched his chin.
I don't know, we're on shaky ground here legally.
Not at all, argued Cumulus. It's elementary grammar. The human specifically stated that entry was forbidden as long as he was alive. That's tantamount to an invitation when he's dead.
Commander wasn't convinced.
The invitation is implied at best.
No,
Interrupted Foley.
they're right. It's a strong case. Once Fowl is dead, the door is wide open. He said it himself.
Maybe.
Maybe nothing, blurted Foley. For heaven's sake, Julius, how much more do you need? We have a crisis here, in case you hadn't noticed.
Root nodded slowly.
1, you're right. 2, I'm gonna run with it. 3, well done, you two. And 4, if you ever call me Julius again, Foley, you'll be eating your own hooves. Now give me a line to the council. I need to get approval for that gold.
Right away, Commander Root, your worship.
Foley grinned, letting the hoof-eating comment slide for Holly's sake.
So we send in the gold.
Muttered Root, thinking aloud.
They send out Holly. We blue rinse the place and stroll in to reclaim the ransom. Simple.
Yeah. So simple, it's brilliant.
Enthused Argon.
Quite a coup for our profession, wouldn't you say, Dr. Cumulus?
Cumulus's head was spinning with possibilities.
Lecture tours, book deals, why, the movie rights alone would be worth a fortune.
Let those sociologists stuff their collective pipe. Puts the kibosh on the depravation breeds antisocial behavior chestnut. This Fowl character has never gone hungry in his life. There's more than one kind of hunger,
Noted Argon.
Very true. Hunger to succeed, hunger to dominate, hunger to...
Root snapped.
Get out. Get out before I strangle the pair of you. And if I ever hear a word of this repeated on an afternoon talk show, I'll know where it came from.
The consultants retreated warily, resolving not to call their agents until they were out of earshot.
I don't know if the council will go for this, admitted Root when they disappeared. It's a lot of gold.
Foley looked up from the console.
How much exactly?
The commander slid a piece of paper across the console.
That much.
That is a lot,
Foley whistled.
a ton. Small unmarked ingots, 24 karat only. Well, at least it's a nice round weight.
Very comforting. I'll be sure to mention that to the council. Have you got that line yet?
The centaur grunted. A negative grunt. Very brazen, really, grunting at a superior officer. Root didn't have the energy to discipline him, but he made a mental note. When this is over, dock Foley's pay for a few decades. He rubbed his eyes exhaustedly. Time lag was beginning to set in. Even though his brain wouldn't let him sleep because he'd been awake when the time stop was initiated, his body was crying out for rest. He rose from the chair, swinging the door wide to let in some air. Stale, time-stop air. Not even molecules could escape the time field, much less a human boy. There was activity by the portal, lots of it. A swarm of troops gathered around a hover cage. Cudgeon stood at the head of the procession, and the entire bunch was heading his way. Root stepped down to meet them.
"What's this?"
he inquired, none too pleasantly.
"A circus?"
Cudgeon's face was pale, but determined. "No, Julius, it's the end of the circus." Root nodded.
"I see. And these are the clowns?"
Foley's head poked through the doorway.
Pardon me for interrupting your extended circus metaphor, but what the hell is that?
"Yes, Lieutenant,"
said Root, nodding at the floating hover cage.
"What the hell is that?"
Cudgeon bolstered his courage with a few deep breaths. "I've taken a leaf from your book, Julius."
"Is that a fact?"
"Yes, it is. You opted to send in a lapsed creature, so now I'm going to..." Root smiled dangerously.
"You don't opt to do anything, Lieutenant. Not without my say-so."
Cudgeon took an unconscious step backwards. "I've been to the council, Julius. I have their full backing." The commander turned to Foley.
"Is this true?"
Apparently, it just came through on the outside line. This is Cudgeon's party now. He told the consul about the ransom demand, and you spring Mr. Diggums. You know what the elders are like when it comes to parting with gold."
Root folded his arms.
"People told me about you, Cudgeon. They said you'd stab me in the back. I didn't believe them. I was a fool."
"This is not about us, Julius. It's about the mission. What's inside this cage is our best chance of success."
"So what's in the cage?" "No, wait, don't tell me." "The only other non-magical creature in the lower elements. The first troll we've managed to take alive in over a century."
"Exactly, the perfect creature to flush out our adversary." Root's cheeks glowed with the effort of restraining his anger.
"I don't believe you're even considering this."
"Face it, Julius, it's the same basic idea as yours."
"No, it isn't. Mulch Diggums made his own choices. He knew the risks."
"Diggums is dead?" Root rubbed his eyes again.
"Yes, it would seem so. A cave-in."
"That just proves I'm right. A troll won't be so easily dispatched."
"It's a dumb animal, for heaven's sake. How can a troll follow instructions?"
Cudgeon smiled, newborn confidence peeping through his apprehension. "What instructions? We just point it at the house and get out of the way. I guarantee you these humans will be begging us to come in and rescue them."
"And what about my officer?"
"We'll have the troll back under lock and key long before Captain Short is in any danger."
"You can guarantee that, can you?"
Cudgeon paused. "That's a chance the council is willing to take."
"Politics,"
spat Root.
"This is all politics to you, Cudgeon. A nice feather in your cap on the way to a council seat. You make me sick."
"Be that as it may, we are proceeding with this strategy. The council have appointed me acting commander, so if you can't put our personal history aside, get the hell out of my way." Root stepped aside.
"Don't worry, Commander. I don't want anything to do with this butchery. The credit is all yours."
Cudgeon put on his best sincere face. "Julius, despite what you think, I have only the interests of the people at heart."
"One person in particular,"
snorted Root. Cudgeon decided to go for the high moral ground. "I don't have to stand here listening to this. Every second talking to you is a second wasted." Root looked him straight in the eye.
"That's about 600 years wasted altogether. Friend."
Cudgeon didn't answer. What could he say? Ambition had a price, and that price was friendship. Cudgeon turned to his squad, a group of hand-picked sprites, loyal only to him. Get the hover cage over to the avenue. We don't green light until I give the word. He brushed past Root, eyes looking anywhere except at his erstwhile friend. Foley wouldn't let him go without a comment.
Hey, Cudgeon.
The acting commander couldn't tolerate that tone, not on his first day. You watch your mouth, Foley. No one is indispensable. The centaur chuckled.
Very true. That's the thing about politics. You get one shot.
Cudgeon was semi-interested in spite of himself.
I know if it was me, continued Foley, and I had one chance, just one chance to book my behind a seat on that council, I certainly wouldn't entrust my future to a troll.
And suddenly, Cudgeon's newfound confidence evaporated, replaced by a shiny pallor. He wiped his brow, hurrying after the departing hover cage.
See you tomorrow, Foley called after him. You'll be taking out my trash.
Root laughed, possibly the first time one of Foley's comments had amused him.
Good man, Foley.
He grinned.
Hit that backstabber where it hurts, right in the ambition.
Thanks, Julius.
The grin disappeared faster than a deep-fried pit slug in the Lep canteen.
I've warned you about the Julius thing, Foley. Now get that outside line open again. I want that gold ready when Cudgeon's plan goes awry. Lobby all my supporters on the council. I'm pretty sure Lope's one of mine. And Kazert's, possibly Vinyaya. She's always had a thing for me, devilishly attractive as I am.
You're joking, of course.
I never joke,
said Root, and he said it with a straight face. Holly had a plan, of sorts. Sneak around shielded, reclaim some fairy weaponry, then cause havoc until Fowl was forced to release her. And if several million Irish pounds worth of property damage happened to ensue, well, that was just a bonus. Holly hadn't felt so good in years. Her eyes blazed with power, and there were sparks sizzling below every centimeter of skin. She had forgotten just how good running hot felt. Captain Short felt in control now, on the hunt. This was what she was trained to do. When this affair had started, the advantage had been with the mud people. But now the boot was on the other foot. She was the hunter, and they were the prey. Holly scaled the great staircase, ever vigilant for the giant manservant. That was one individual she wasn't taking any chances with. If those fingers closed around her skull, she was history, helmet or not. Assuming she managed to find a helmet. The vast house was like a mausoleum, without a single sign of life inside its vaulted rooms. Spooky portraits, though, each one with foul eyes, suspicious and glittering. Holly determined to torch the lot of them when she recovers her Neutrino 2000. Vindictive, perhaps, but totally justified considering what Artemis Fowl had put her through. She scaled the steps swiftly, following the curve around to the upper landing. A slot of pale light peeped in from under the last door in the corridor. Holly placed her palm against the wood, feeling for vibration. Activity, all right. Shouting and footsteps thundering this way. Holly jumped back, flattening herself against the velveteen wallpaper. Not a moment too soon. A hulking shape burst through the doorway and hurtled down the corridor, leaving a maelstrom of air currents in its wake.
Juliet!
He shouted, his sister's name hanging in the air, long after he had disappeared down the stairs. Don't worry, Butler, thought Holly. He's having the time of her life, glued to WrestleMania. But the open door presented a welcome opportunity. She slipped through before the mechanical arm would close it again. Artemis Fowl was waiting, anti-shield filters cobbled onto his sunglasses. Good evening, Captain Short, he began, confidence apparently intact. At the risk of sounding cliched, I've been expecting you. Holly didn't respond, didn't even look her jailer in the eye. Instead, she utilized her training to scan the room, her gaze resting briefly on each surface. You are, of course, still bound by the promises made earlier tonight. But Holly wasn't listening. She was sprinting towards a stainless steel workbench bolted to the far wall. So basically our situation hasn't changed. You are still my hostage.
Yeah,
Muttered Holly, running her fingers over the rows of confiscated retrieval equipment. She selected a stealth-coated helmet, sliding it over her pointed ears. The pneumatic pads pumped to cradle her crown. She was safe now. Any further commands given by Fowl meant nothing through the reflective visor. A wire mic slotted down automatically. Contact was immediate.
On revolving frequencies. Broadcasting on revolving frequencies. Holly, if you can hear me, take cover.
Holly recognized Foley's voice. Something familiar in a crazy situation.
Repeat, take cover. Cudgeon is sending in a...
Something I should know, said Artemis.
Quiet,
Hissed Holly, worried by the tone of Foley's usually flippant voice.
I say again, they are sending in a troll to secure your release.
Holly started. Cudgeon was calling the shots now. Not good news at all. Fowl interrupted again.
It's not polite, you know, ignoring your host.
Holly snarled.
Enough is enough.
She pulled back her fist, fingers curled in a tight bunch. Artemis didn't flinch. Why would he? Butler always intervened before punches landed. But then something caught his eye. A large figure running down the stairway on the first-floor monitor. It was Butler.
That's right, rich boy, said Holly nastily. You're on your own this time.
And before Artemis's eyes had time to widen, Holly put in extra few pounds of spring in her elbow and whacked her abductor right on the nose.
Oof,
he said, collapsing on his rear end.
Oh, yes, that felt good.
Holly focused on the voice buzzing in her ear.
We've been feeding a loop to the outside cameras, so the humans won't see anything come up the avenue. But it's on the way, trust me.
Foley, come in.
Holly, is that you?
The one and only. Foley, there is no loop. I can see everything that's going on around here.
The cunning little. He must have rebooted the system.
The avenue was a hive of fairy activity. Cudgeon was there, haughtily directing his team of sprites. And in the center of the melee stood a 16-foot-tall hover cage, floating on a cushion of air. The cage was directly before the manor door, and the techies were securing a concussor seal to the surrounding wall. When activated, several alloy rods in the seal's collar would be detonated simultaneously, effectively disintegrating the door. When the dust settled, the troll would only have one place to go. Into the manor. Holly checked the other monitors. Butler had managed to drag Juliet from the cell. They had ascended the cellar level and were just crossing the lobby. Right in the line of fire.
Darvit,
she swore, crossing to the work surface. Artemis was propped on his elbows.
You hit me,
he said in disbelief. Holly strapped on a set of hummingbirds.
That's right, Fowl, and there's plenty more where that came from. Stay right where you are if you know what's good for you.
For once in his life, Artemis realized that he didn't have a snappy answer. He opened his mouth, waiting for his brain to supply the customary pithy comeback, but nothing arrived. Holly slipped the Neutrino 2000 into its holster.
That's right, mud boy. Playtime's over.
For the profession...
Playtime's over. Time for the professionals to take over. If you're a good boy, I'll buy you a lollipop when I come back.
And when Holly was long gone, soaring beneath the hallway's ancient oak beams, Artemis said,
I don't like lollipops.
It was a woefully inadequate response, and Artemis was instantly appalled with himself. Pathetic, really. I don't like lollipops? No self-respecting criminal mastermind would be caught dead even using the word lollipops. He really would have to put together a database of witty responses for occasions such as this. It was quite possible that Artemis would have sat like that for some time, totally detached from the situation at hand, had not the front door imploded, shaking the manor to its foundations. A thing like that is enough to knock the daydreams from anyone's head. A sprite alighted before asking Acting Commander Cudgeon.
The collar is in place, sir.
Cudgeon nodded.
Are you sure it's tight, Captain? I don't want that troll coming out the wrong way.
Tighter than a goblin's wallet. There's not a bubble of air getting through that seal, tighter than stinkworms. Very well, Captain, interrupted Cudgeon hurriedly before the sprite could complete his graphic analogy. Beside them, the hovercage shook violently, almost toppling the container from its air cushion. We better blow that sucker, Commander. If we don't let him out of there soon, my boys are going to spend the next week scraping. Fine, Captain. Blow it. Blow it, for goodness sake. Cudgeon hurried behind the blast shield, scribbling a note on his palm-top screen. Memo, remind the sprites to watch their language. After all, I am a commander now. The foul-mouthed captain in question turned to the hovercage's cab driver. Blow her, chicks. Blow the door off its damn hinges. Yes, sir. Blow its damn hinges. That's Roger. Cudgeon winced. There'd be a general meeting tomorrow. First thing. By then, he'd have the commander's icon on his lapel. Even a sprite might be less likely to curse with the Triple Acorn logo winking in his face. Chicks pulled down his shrapnel goggles. Even though the cab had a quartz windscreen, the goggles were cool. Girls loved them. Or so the driver thought. In his mind's eye, he saw himself as a grim-faced daredevil. Sprites were like that. Give a fairy a pair of wings and he thinks he's God's gift to women. But Chick's Verbal's ill-fated quest to impress the dames is, once again, another story. In this particular tale, he serves only one purpose, and that is to melodramatically push the detonate button, which he does, with great aplomb. 24 controlled charges detonated in their chambers, driving 24 alloy cylinders out of their mounts at over 1,000 miles per hour. Upon impact, each bar pulverized the contact area, plus the surrounding 15 centimeters, effectively blowing the door off its damn hinges, as the captain would say. When the dust settled, the handlers winched back the containment wall inside the cage, and began hammering the side panels with the flats of their hands. Cudgeon peeped out from behind the blast shield. All clear, Captain? Just a damn second, Commander. Chicks, how are we doing? Chicks checked the cabin's monitors. He's moving. The hammering is spooking him. The claws are coming out. My, he's a big sucker. I wouldn't want to be that recon babe if she gets in the way of this. Cudgeon felt a momentary pang of guilt, which he dispelled with his favorite daydream, a vision of himself sinking into a beige velour council seat. The cage heaved violently, almost dislodging Chicks from his seat. He held on like a rodeo rider. Whoa, he's on the move. Lock and load, boys. I have a feeling that any second we're going to be getting a cry for help. Cudgeon didn't bother locking and loading. He preferred to leave that sort of thing to the foot soldiers. The acting commander considered himself too important to be risked in an insecure situation. For the good of the people in general, it was better he remain outside the op zone. Hey, Cat. Yeah, it's book time. Butler took the stairs 4 at a time. It was possibly the first time he had ever abandoned Master Artemis in a time of crisis. But Juliet was family, and there was obviously something seriously wrong with his baby sister. That fairy had said something to her, and now she was just sitting in her cell giggling. Butler feared the worst. If anything were to happen to Juliet, he didn't know how he'd live with himself. He felt a dribble of sweat slide down the crown of his shaven head. The whole situation was shooting off in bizarre directions. Fairies, magic, and now a hostage loose in the manor. How could he be expected to control things? It took a 4-man team to guard the lowliest politician, but he was expected to contain this impossible situation on his own. Butler sprinted down the corridor into what had recently been Captain Short's cell. Juliet was sprawled on the cot, enraptured by a concrete wall. "What are you doing?" he gasped, drawing the Sig Sauer 9mm with practiced ease. His sister barely spared him a glance. "Quiet, you big ape! Louis, the love machine is on. He ain't so tough. I could take him." Butler blinked. She was talking gibberish, obviously drugged. "Let's go. Artemis wants us upstairs in the situations room." Juliet pointed a manicured finger at the wall. "Artemis can wait. This is for the Intercontinental title. And it's a grudge match.
Louis ate the hogman's pet piggy.
The manservant studied the wall. It was definitely blank. He didn't have time for this. Right, let's go, he growled, slinging his sister over a broad shoulder.
No, you big bully,
she protested, hammering his back with tiny fists.
Not now. Hogman! Hogman!
Butler ignored the objections, settling into a loping run. Who the hell was this Hogman person? One of her boyfriends, no doubt. He was going to keep closer tabs on callers to the lodge in the future. Butler, pick up. It was Artemis, on the handheld. Butler jiggled his sister up a foot so he could reach his belt.
Lollipops,
barked his employer. Say again, I thought you said...
I mean, get out of there. Take cover. Take cover.
Take cover? The military term didn't sound right coming out of Master Artemis's mouth. Like a diamond ring in a lucky bag. Take cover?
Yes, Butler, cover. I thought speaking in primal terms would be the quickest route to your cognitive functions. Obviously, I was mistaken.
That was more like it. Butler scanned the hall for a nook to duck into. Not much choice, the only shelter was provided by the suits of medieval armor punctuating the walls. The manservant ducked into the alcove behind a 14th century knight, complete with lance and mace. Ah. Hey man, thank you for the gift sub. Thank you for the 3 gift subs, wow. Appreciate you. But you should save that money for your passport. No, stop it, Nana. Save the money for your passport. You yourself said that you've got a lot of expenses. You gotta get a passport, and you gotta take Moro to the vet. No more. No more. I mean, thank you, but no more. Yes, Cat, now you have a sub here. You can use the emotes. The non-free ones, at least. Damn it, Nana, stop. I mean, thank you, but stop. Fine, now I'm happy. Okay, alright, thank you. I appreciate you. But yes. You have too many important, expensive things right now. But thank you. Right, where was I? I know stream elements, I know. You said 5, now you're happy, and now you're not happy? Okay, long enough. I was wondering when someone would come and gift everyone here a sub. Yeah, it's generally between Nana and Koro. Those are the 2 main sub-gifters. Both lovely beans, but... Damn it, Nana, do I have to punish you? I'm gonna have to punish you later. Bad kitten. I love you, but I'm still gonna punish you. Where were we? Right, they ducked into an alcove behind a 14th century knight, complete with lance and mace. Julia tapped the breastplate.
You think you're mean? I could take you with one hand.
Quiet, hissed Butler. He held his breath and listened. Something was approaching the main door. Something big. Butler leaned out far enough to get one eye on the lobby. Then you could say that the doorway exploded. But that particular verb doesn't do the action justice. Rather, it shattered into infinitesimal pieces. Butler had seen something like this once before when a Force 7 earthquake had rippled through a Colombian drug lord's estate, seconds before he had been scheduled to blow it up. This was slightly different, more localized, very professional. It was a classic anti-terrorist tactics. Hit him with smoke and sonics, then go in with the while the targets were disoriented. Whatever was coming, it would be bad. Not gonna punish you later. I got mice considered. I'm gay. Yes. You will be punished. And I will take special considerations to make sure it is an adequate one. Something to make it stick. You will be punished. Indeed. He was certain of it. He was absolutely right. Dust clouds settled slowly, depositing a pale sheet on the Tuscan rug. Madame Fowl would have been furious if she ever so much as put a toe outside the attic door. Butler's instincts told him to move. Zigzag across the ground floor, make for higher ground. Stay low to minimize the target. This would be the perfect time to do it, before visibility cleared. Any second now, a hail of bullets would be whistling through the archway. The last place he wanted to be was pinned down on a lower level. And on any other day, Butler would have moved. He would have been halfway up that stairway before his brain had time for second thoughts. But today he had his baby sister over his shoulder, spouting gibberish, and the last thing he wanted to do was expose her to murderous assault fire. With Juliet in the state she was in, she'd probably challenge the ferry commanders to a tag wrestling match. And though his sister talked tough, she was just a kid, really. No match for trained military personnel. So Butler hunkered down, propped Juliet against a tapestry behind a suit of armor, and checked his safety catch. Off. Good. Come and get me, ferry boys. Hey, Becca. Good to see you. Yeah. Let's see. Something moved in the dust haze. It was immediately obvious to Butler that the something wasn't human. The manservant had been on too many safaris not to recognize an animal when he saw it. He studied the creature's gait. Possibly simian. Similar upper body structure to an ape, but bigger than any primate Butler had ever seen. If it was an ape, then his handgun wasn't going to be of much use. You could put 5 rounds in the skull of a bull ape and he'd still have time to eat you before his brain realized he was dead. But it wasn't an ape. Apes didn't have night eyes. This creature did. Glowing crimson pupils, half hidden behind shaggy forelocks. Tusks, too, but not elephantine. These were curved with serrated edges. Gutting weapons. Butler felt a tingle low in his stomach. He'd had the feeling once before, on his first day at the Swiss Academy. It was fear. The creature stepped clear of the dust haze. Butler gasped. Again, his first since the Academy. This was like no adversary he'd ever faced before. The manservant realized instantly what the fairies had done. They had sent in a primal hunter. A creature with no interest in magic or rules. A thing that would simply kill anything in its way, regardless of species. This was the perfect predator. That much was clear from the meat-ripping points on its teeth, from the dried gore encrusted beneath its claws, and from the distilled hatred spilling from its eyes. The troll shambled forward, squinting through the chandelier light. Yellowed claws scraped along the marble tiling, throwing up sparks in their wake. It was sniffing now, snorting curious breaths, head cocked to one side. Butler had seen that pose before, on the snouts of starved pit bulls just before their Russian handlers set them loose on a bear hunt. The shaggy head froze. Its snout pointed directly at Butler's hiding place. It was no coincidence. The man's servant peeked out between the chainmail fingers of a gauntlet. Now came the stalk. Once a scent had been acquired, the predator would attempt a slow, silent approach before the lightning strike. But apparently the troll had not read the predator's handbook, because it didn't bother with the stealth approach, jumping directly to the lightning strike. Moving faster than Butler would have believed possible, the troll sprang across the lobby, brushing the medieval armor aside as though it were a shop mannequin. Juliet blinked.
"Oh,"
she gasped.
"it's Bigfoot Bob, Canadian champion, 1998. I thought you were in the Andes, looking for your relatives."
Butler didn't bother to correct her. His sister wasn't lucid. At least she would die happy. While his brain was contemplating this morbid observation, Butler's gun hand was coming up. He squeezed the trigger as rapidly as the 6 hours mechanism would allow. 2 in the chest, 3 between the eyes. That was the plan. He got the chest shots in, but the troll interfered before Butler could complete the formation. The interference took the form of scything tusks that ducked below Butler's guard. They collided around his trunk, slicing through his Kevlar-reinforced jacket like a razor through rice paper. Butler felt a cold pain as the serrated ivory pierced his chest. He knew immediately that the wound was fatal. His breath came hard. That was a lung gone. Hey, Goro. Thank you for the resubscription. Appreciate you. And gouts of blood were matting the troll's fur. His blood. No one could lose that amount and live. Nevertheless, the pain was instantly replaced by a curious euphoria. Some form of natural anesthetic injected through channels in the beast's tusks. More dangerous than the deadliest poison. In minutes, Butler would not only stop struggling, but go giggling to his grave. The manservant fought against the narcotics in his system, struggling furiously in the troll's grip. But it was no use. His fight was over almost before it had begun. The troll grunted, flipping the limp human body over its head. Butler's burly frame collided with the wall at a speed human bones were never meant to withstand. The bricks cracked from floor to ceiling. Butler's spine went too. Now, even if the blood loss didn't get him, paralysis would. Juliet was still enthralled by the mesmer.
"Come on, brother. Get off the canvas. We all know you're faking."
The troll paused, some basic curiosity piqued by the lack of fear. He would have suspected a trick if he could have formulated such a complicated thought. But in the end, appetite won out. This creature smelled flesh, fresh and tender. Flesh from above ground was different, laced with surface smells. Once you've had open-air meat, it's hard to go back. The troll ran a tongue over his incisors and reached out with a shaggy hand. And I'm going to take a drink break now. I do like water. In fact, I'm going to quickly pop into my closet and grab a sore throat lozenge. I don't really have a sore throat, but it is getting a little strange, so I shall return. Blah, 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 blah. I will return momentarily. Stay good. Don't get into anything while I'm gone. I'll be right back. You adorable little beans of chaos. Don't do anything. But everything still seems to be intact. Don't know why or how, but for some reason I half suspected you would set things on fire. Don't know how you'd manage, but, you know. A lozenge. Right. Back to the book. Holly tucked the hummingbirds close to her torso, dropping into a controlled dive. She skimmed the banisters, emerging into the portico below the stained glass dome. The time stoplight filtered unnaturally, splitting into thick azure shafts. Light, thought Holly. The helmet high beams worked before. There was no reason why they wouldn't work again. It was too late for the male. He was a bag of broken bones. But the female, she still had a few seconds left before the troll split her open. Holly spiraled down through the fox light, searching her helmet console for the sonics button. Sonics were generally used on canines, but in this case it might provide a moment's distraction. At least enough to get her to ground level. The troll was reaching in towards Juliet underhanded. It was a move generally reserved for the defenseless. The claws would curl in below the ribs, rupturing the heart. Minimum damage to the flesh and no last-minute tension to toughen the meat. Holly activated her sonics, and nothing happened. Not good. Generally, your average troll would be at the very least irritated by the ultra-high frequency tone, but this particular beast didn't even shake his shaggy head. There were a couple of possibilities. 1. The helmet was malfunctioning. 2. This troll was deaf as the proverbial post. Unfortunately, Holly had no way of knowing, as the tones were inaudible to fairy ears. Whatever the problem, it forced Holly to adopt a strategy she would rather not have resorted to. Direct contact. All to save a human's life. She'd gone Section 8, without a doubt. Holly jerked the throttle straight from fourth to reverse. Not very good for the gears. She'd get a dressing down from the mechanics for that, in the unlikely event she actually survived this never-ending nightmare. The effect of this gear crunching was to flip her around in midair, so that her boot heels were pointed directly at the troll's head. Holly winced. 2 entanglements with the same troll. Unbelievable. Her heels caught the beast square on the crown of its head. At that speed, there was at least half a ton of G-force behind the impact. Only the reinforced ribbing in her suit prevented Holly's leg bones from shattering. Even so, she heard her knee pop. The pain clawed its way to her forehead. Ruined her recovery maneuver, too. Instead of rappelling herself to a safe altitude, Holly crumpled onto the troll's back, becoming instantly entangled in the ropey fur. The troll was suitably annoyed. Not only had something distracted it from dinner, but now that something was nestled in its fur, along with the cleaner slugs. The beast straightened, reaching a clawed hand over its own shoulder. The curved nails raked Holly's helmet, scoring parallel grooves in the alloy. Juliet was safe for the moment, but Holly had taken her place on the endangered individuals list. The troll squeezed tighter, somehow securing a grip on the helmet's anti-friction coating, which, according to Foley, was impossible to grip. Serious words would be had. If not in this life, then definitely the next. Captain Short found herself being hoisted aloft to face her old enemy. Holly struggled to concentrate through the pain and confusion. Her leg was swinging like a pendulum, and the troll's breath was breaking over her face in rancid waves. There had been a plan, hadn't there? Surely she didn't fly down here just to curl up and die. There must have been a strategy. All those years in the academy must have taught her something. Whatever her plan had been, it floated just out of reach, somewhere between pain and shock. Out of reach. The lights, Holly. A voice in her head, probably talking to herself. An out-of-head experience. She must remember to tell Foley about this. Foley?
Hit the lights, Holly. If those tusks get to work, you'll be dead before the magic can kick in.
Foley, is that you?
Holly may have said this aloud, or she may have thought it. She wasn't sure.
The tunnel high beams, Captain. The tunnel high beams, Captain.
A different voice, not so cuddly.
Hit the button now. That's an order.
Oops. It was Root. She was falling down on the job again. First Hamburg, then Martina Franca, now this. Yes, sir, she mumbled, trying to sound professional.
Press it. Now, Captain Short.
Holly looked the troll straight in its merciless eyes and pressed the button. Very melodramatic. Or it would have been if the lights had worked. Unfortunately for Holly, in her haste, she'd grabbed one of the helmets cannibalized by Artemis Fowl. Hence, no sonics, no filters, and no tunnel beams. The halogen bulbs were still installed, but the wires had come loose during Artemis's investigations.
Oh dear,
Breathed Holly.
Oh dear, barked Root. What's that supposed to mean? The beams are offline,
Explained Foley.
Oh,
Root's voice trailed off. What more was there to say? Holly squinted at the troll. If you didn't know trolls were dumb animals, you'd swear the beast was grinning, standing there with blood dripping from various chest wounds. Grinning. Captain Short didn't like being grinned at.
laugh this off.
She said, and butted the troll with the only weapon available to her helmeted head. Valiant, undoubtedly, but about as effective as trying to cut down a tree with a feather. Luckily, the ill-advised blow had a side effect. For a split second, 2 strands of conductor filament connected, sending power flooding to one of the tunnel beams. 400 watts of white light blasted through the troll's crimson eyes, dispatching lightning rods of agony to the brain. Mumbled Holly, in the second before the troll convulsed involuntarily. Its spasms sent her spinning across the paracord floor, leg jittering along behind her. The wall was approaching at an alarming speed. Maybe, thought Holly hopefully, this will be one of those impacts where you don't feel any pain until later. No, replied the pessimistic side, afraid not. She slammed into a Norman narrative tapestry, bringing it tumbling down on top of her. Pain was immediate and overwhelming.
oof, grunted Foley. I felt that. Visuals are shut. Pain sensors went right off the scale. Your lungs are busted, Captain. We're going to lose you for a while. But don't worry, Holly. Your magic should be kicking in already.
Holly felt the blue tingle of magic scurrying to her various injuries. Thank the gods for acorns. But it was too little too late. The pain was way beyond her threshold. Just before unconsciousness claimed her, Holly's hand flopped from beneath the tapestry. It landed on Butler's arm, touching the bare skin. Amazingly, the human wasn't dead. A dogged pulse forced the blood through smashed limbs. Heal, thought Holly, and the magic scurried down her fingers. The troll faced a dilemma. Which female to eat first? Choices, choices. This decision was not made any easier by the lingering agony buzzing around its shaggy head, or the cluster of bullets lodged in the fatty chest tissue. Eventually, it settled on the surface dweller. Soft human meat, no dense fairy muscle to chew through. The beast squatted low, tilting the girl's chin with one yellowed talon. A pulsing jugular looped lazily down the length of her neck. The heart or the neck? The troll wondered. The neck. It was closer. It turned the talon sideways so that the edge pressed against the soft human flesh. One sharp swipe and the girl's own heartbeat would drive the blood from her body. Butler woke up, which was a surprise in itself. He knew immediately that he was alive, because of the searing pain permeating every cubic centimeter of his body. This was not good. Alive he may have been, but considering the fact that his neck had a 180 twist on it, he'd never so much as walk the dog again, not to mention rescue his sister. The man's servant twiddled his fingers. Hurt like hell. But at least there was movement. It was amazing that he had any motor functions at all, considering the trauma his spinal column had suffered. His toes seemed alright too, but that could have been phantom response, given that he couldn't actually see them. The bleeding from his chest wound appeared to have stopped, and he was thinking straight. All in all, he was in much better shape than he had any right to be. What in heaven's name was going on here? Butler noticed something. There were blue sparks dancing along his torso. He must be hallucinating, creating pleasant images to distract himself from the inevitable. A very realistic hallucination, it must be said. The sparks congregated at trauma points, sinking into the skin. Butler shuddered. This was no hallucination. Something extraordinary was happening here. Magical. Magic. That rang a bell in his recently reassembled cranium. Fairy magic. Something was healing his wounds. He twisted his head, wincing at the grate of sliding vertebrae. There was a hand resting on his forearm. Spark flowed from slim elven fingers, intuitively targeting bruises, breaks, or ruptures. There were a lot of injuries to be dealt with, but the tiny sparks handled it all quickly and effectively, like an army of mystical beavers repairing storm damage. Your net's still having problems. I'm sorry to hear that. Still, that was a very interesting comparison. Let's see, where were we? There we are. Butler could actually feel his bones knitting and the blood retreating from semi-congealed scabs. His head twisted involuntarily as his vertebrae slid into their niches. His strength returned in a rush as magic reproduced the 3 liters of blood lost through his chest wound. Butler jumped to his feet. Actually jumped. He was himself again. No, it was more than that. He was as strong as he had ever been. Strong enough to have another crack at that beast hunkered over his baby sister. He felt his rejuvenated heart speed up like the stroke of an outboard motor. Calm, Butler told himself. Passion is the enemy of efficiency. But calm or no, the situation was desperate. This beast had already effectively killed him once, and this time he didn't even have the Sig Sauer. His own skills aside, it would be nice to have a weapon. Something with a bit of weight to it. His boot clinked on a metallic object. Butler glanced down at the debris strewn in the troll's wake. Perfect. There was nothing but snow on the view screen.
Come on, Root urged. Hurry up.
Foley elbowed past his superior.
Maybe if you didn't insist on blocking all the circuit boards.
Root shuffled out of the way grudgingly. In his mind, it was the circuit board's fault for being behind him. The centaur's head disappeared into an access panel.
Anything? Nothing, just interference.
Root slapped the screen. Not a good idea. First, because there was not one chance in a million that it could actually help. And second, because plasma screens grow extremely hot after prolonged use.
Darvit! Don't touch that screen, by the way.
Oh, ha. We haven't time for jokes now, do we?
No, actually. Anything?
The snow settled into recognizable shapes.
That's it. Hold it there. We got a signal. I've activated the secondary camera. Plain old video, I'm afraid, but it'll have to do.
Root didn't comment. He was watching the screen. This must be a movie. It couldn't be real life.
So, what's going on in there? Anything interesting?
Root tried to answer, but his soldier's vocabulary just didn't have the superlatives.
What is it?
The commander made an attempt.
It's the human. Oh, forget it, Fowl. You're gonna have to see this for yourself.
Holly watched the entire episode through a gap in the tapestry folds. If she hadn't seen it, she wouldn't have believed it. In fact, it wasn't until she reviewed the video for her report that she was certain the whole thing wasn't a hallucination brought on by a near-death experience. As it was, the video sequence became something of a legend, initially doing the rounds on the amateur home movies cable shows and ending up in the LEP Academy hand-to-hand curriculum. The human, Butler, was strapping on a medieval suit of armor. Incredible as it seemed, he apparently intended going toe-to-toe with the troll. Holly tried to warn him, tried to make some sound, but the magic hadn't yet reinflated her crushed lungs. Butler closed his visor, hefting a vicious mace. "Now," he grunted through the grill, "I'll show you what happens when someone lays a hand on my sister." The human twirled the mace as though it were a cheerleader's baton, ramming it home between the troll's shoulder blades. A blow like that, while not fatal, certainly distracted the troll from its intended victim. Butler planted his foot just above the creature's haunches and tugged the weapon free. It relinquished its grip with a sticky sucking sound. He skipped backwards, settling into a defensive stance. The troll rounded on him, all 10 talons sliding out to their full extent. Drops of venom glistened from the tip of each tusk. Playtime was over, but there would be no lightning strike this time. The beast was wary. It had been hurt. This latest attacker would be afforded the same respect as another male of the species. As far as the troll was concerned, his territory was being encroached on, and there was only one way of solving a dispute of this nature. The same way that trolls solved every dispute. "I must warn you," said Butler, straight-faced. "I am armed, and prepared to use deadly force if necessary." Holly would have groaned if she could. Banter. The human was trying to engage a troll in macho repertoire. Then Captain Schwartz realized her mistake. The words weren't important, it was the tone he employed. Calm, soothing, like a trainer with a spooked unicorn. "Step away from the female. Easy now." The troll ballooned its cheeks and howled. Scare tactics. Testing the waters. Butler didn't flinch. Yeah, real scary. Now just back out of the door and I won't have to cut you into little pieces." The troll snorted, miffed by this reaction. Generally, his roar sent whatever creature was facing it scurrying down the tunnel. "One step at a time. Nice and slow. Easy there, big fellow." You could almost see it in the troll's eyes. A flicker of uncertainty. Maybe this human was... And that was when Butler struck. He danced under the tusks, hammering home in a devastating uppercut with his medieval weapon. The troll staggered backwards, talons flailing wildly. But it was too late. Butler had stepped out of reach, scooting across to the other side of the corridor. The troll lumbered after him, spitting dislodged teeth from pulped gums. Butler sank to his knees, sliding and turning, the polished floor bearing him like an ice skater. He ducked and pirouetted, facing his pursuer. "Guess what I found," he said, raising the Sig Sauer. No chest shots this time. Butler laid in the rest of the automatic's clip in a 10-centimeter diameter between the troll's eyes. Unfortunately for Butler, due to the millennia spent head-butting each other, trolls had developed a thick ridge of bone covering their brows. So his textbook spread failed to penetrate the skull, in spite of the Teflon-coated load. However, 10 Devastator slugs can't be ignored by any creature on the planet, and the troll was no exception. The bullets beat a sledgehammer tattoo on its cranium, causing instant concussion. The animal staggered backwards, slapping at its own forehead. Butler was after it in a heartbeat, pinning one shaggy foot beneath the mace spikes. The troll was concussed, blinded by blood, and lame. A normal person would feel a shred of remorse, but not Butler. He'd seen too many men gored by injured animals. Now was the dangerous time. It was no time for mercy. It was time to terminate with extreme prejudice. Holly could only watch helplessly as the human took careful aim and delivered a series of crippling blows to the stricken creature. First, he took out the tendons, bringing the troll to its knees. Then he abandoned the mace and went to work with gauntleted hands, perhaps deadlier than the mace had been. The unfortunate troll fought back pathetically, even managing to land a few glancing blows, but they failed to penetrate the antique armor. Meanwhile, Butler toiled like a surgeon, working on the assumption that the troll and human physiques were basically the same, He rained blow after blow on the dumb creature, reducing it to a heap of quivering fur in so many seconds. It was pitiful to watch, and the manservant wasn't finished yet. He stripped off the bloodied gauntlets, loading a fresh clip into the handgun. "Let's see how much bone you have under your chin."
No,
Gasped Holly, with the first breath in her body.
don't.
Butler ignored her, jamming the barrel beneath the troll's jaw.
Don't do it. You owe me.
Butler paused. Juliet was alive, it was true. Confused, certainly, but alive. He thumbed the hammer on his pistol. Every brain cell in his head screamed for him to pull the trigger. But Juliet was alive. "You owe me, human."
Ah, no, wrong voice. You owe me, human.
Butler sighed. He'd regret this later. "Very well, Captain. The beast lives to fight another day. Lucky for him, I'm in a good mood."
Holly made a noise. It was somewhere between a whimper and a chuckle. Now, let's get rid of our hairy friend.
Butler rolled the unconscious troll onto an armored trolley, dragging it to the devastated doorway. With a huge heave, he jettisoned the lot into the suspended night. "And don't come back," he shouted.
Amazing,
said Root. "Tell me about it," agreed Foley.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Grok. Yeah, you did. Very close. But no.
I need to emphasize at this point that this is a kid's story. Yeah. He just beat the shit out of, with a mace, a troll, and was about to blow its brains apart by placing a handgun underneath its chin, with the intention to blow its brains out from below. Children's story. Chapter 9, Ace in the Hole. And overall in this book, we've got about 35 pages left. So yeah, we'll definitely be finishing up in less than an hour here, I'd say. Less than an hour, maybe. Artemis tried the doorknob and got a scorched palm for his trouble. Sealed. The fairy must have blasted her with her weapon. Very astute. One less variable in the equation. It was exactly what he himself would have done. Artemis did not waste any time attempting to force open the door. It was reinforced steel, and he was 12. You didn't have to be a genius to figure it out. Even though he was. Instead, the Fowl heir apparent crossed the monitor wall and followed the developments from there. He knew immediately what the Lep were up to. Send in the troll to secure a cry for help, interpret it as an invitation, and next thing you know, a brigade of goblin stormtroopers were taking the manor. Clever. And unanticipated. It was the second time he'd underestimated his opponents. One way or another, there wouldn't be a third. As the drama below unfolded on the monitors, Artemis's emotions jumped from terror to pride. Butler had done it. Defeated the troll and without a single plea for aid passing his lips. Watching the display, Artemis appreciated fully, perhaps for the first time, the service provided by the Butler family. Artemis activated the tri-band radio, broadcasting on revolving frequencies. "Commander Root, you are monitoring all channels, I presume?" For a few moments, nothing but white noise emanated from the micro speakers. Then Artemis heard the sharp click of a mic button.
"Hear you, human? What can I do for you?"
"Is that the commander?" A noise filtered through the black gaze. It sounded like a whinny.
"Ah, it's Foley." "No, this is not the commander. This is Foley, the centaur. Is that the kidnapping lowlife human?"
It took Artemis a moment to process the fact that he'd been insulted. "Mr. Foley,"
You have obviously not studied your psych texts. It is not wise to antagonize the hostage taker. I may be unstable.
May be unstable. There's no may about it. Not that it matters. Soon you'll be no more than a cloud of radioactive molecules.
Artemis chuckled.
That's where you're mistaken, my quadruped friend. By the time that biobomb is detonated, I will be long gone from this time stop.
It was Foley's turn to chuckle.
You're bluffing, human. If there was a way to escape the field, I would have found it. I think you're talking through your...
Thankfully, it was at that moment Root took over at the microphone.
Fowl, this is Commander Root. What do you want?
I would just like to inform you, Commander, that in spite of your attempted betrayal, I am still willing to negotiate. Wait, can someone think you would leave someone? Ah. Hey, Yorkshire, good to see you. Let's see. Where was I? Ah, yes. Willing to negotiate.
That troll had nothing to do with me, protested Root. It was done against my wishes.
The fact that it was done, and by the LEP, whatever trust we had is gone. So here's my ultimatum. You have 30 minutes to send in the gold, or else I will refuse to release Captain Short. Furthermore, I will not take her with me when I leave the time field, leaving her to be disintegrated by the biobomb.
Don't be a fool, human. You're deluding yourself. Mud technology is aeons beyond ours. There is no way to escape the time field.
Artemis leaned in close to the mic, smiling his wolfish smile.
There's only one way to find out, Root. Are you willing to bet Captain Short's life on your hunch?
Root's hesitation was highlighted by the hiss of interference. His reply, when it came, was tinged with just the right note of defeat.
No,
he sighed.
I'm not. You'll have your gold, Fowl. A ton. 24 carat.
Artemis smirked. Quite the actor, our Commander Root.
30 minutes, Commander. Count the seconds if your clock's stopped. I'm waiting, but not for long.
Artemis terminated the contact, settling back in the swivel chair. It would seem as though the bait had been taken. No doubt the LEP analyst had discovered his accidental invitation. The fairies would pay up because they believed the gold would be theirs again as soon as he was dead, vaporized by the biobomb, which, of course, he wouldn't be. In theory. Ah, hey, Gardolph, good to see you. Butler put 3 rounds into the door frame. The door itself was steel and would have sent the Devastator slugs ricocheting straight back at him. But the frame was the original porous stone used to build the manor. It crumbled like chalk. A very basic security flaw, and one that would have to be remedied once this business was over. Master Artemis was waiting calmly in his chair by the monitor bank. Nice work, Butler.
Thank you, Artemis. We were in trouble for a moment there, if it hadn't been for the captain.
Artemis nodded.
Yes, I saw. Healing. One of the fairy arts. I wonder why she did it.
I wonder too,
said Butler softly.
We certainly didn't deserve it.
Artemis glanced up sharply.
Keep the faith, old friend. The end is in sight.
Butler nodded. He even attempted to smile. But even though there were plenty of teeth in the grin, there was no heart.
In less than an hour, Captain Short will be back with her people, and we will have sufficient funds to relaunch some of our more tasteful enterprises.
I know. It's just...
Artemis didn't have to ask. He knew exactly what Butler was feeling. Fairy had saved both their lives, and yet he insisted on holding her to ransom. To a man of honor like Butler, this was almost more than he could bear. The negotiations are over. One way or another, she will be returned to her kind. No harm will befall Captain Short. You have my word.
And Julia?
And Juliet. Yes?
Is there any danger...
Wait. And Juliet?
Yes?
Is there any danger to my sister?
No. No danger.
The fairies are just going to give us this gold and walk away?
Artemis snorted gently. No, not exactly. They're going to biobomb Fowl Manor the second Captain Short is clear. Butler took a breath to speak, but hesitated. Obviously, there was more to the plan. Master Fowl would tell him when he needed to know. So instead of quizzing his employer, he made a simple statement.
I trust you, Artemis.
Yes, replied the boy. The weight of that trust etched on his brow. I know. Cudgeon was doing what politicians did best, trying to duck responsibility. Your officer helped the humans, he blurted, mustering as much indignation as possible. The entire operation was proceeding exactly as planned until your female attacked our deputy.
Deputy, chortled Foley. Now the troll's a deputy.
Yes, he is. And that human made mincemeat of him. This entire situation could be wrapped up if it wasn't for your department's incompetence. Ordinarily, Root would have blown his top at this point, but he knew that Cudgeon was grasping at straws, desperately trying to save his career. So the commander just smiled.
Hey, Foley. Yes, Commander. Did we get the troll assault on disc?
The centaur heaved a dramatic sigh.
No, sir. We ran out of discs just before the troll went in. What a pity. A real shame. Those discs could have been invaluable to Acting Commander Cudgeon at his hearing.
Cudgeon's cool went out the window. Give me those discs, Julius. I know they're in here. This is blatant obstruction.
You're the only one guilty of obstruction around here, Cudgeon. Using this affair to further your own career.
Cudgeon's face took on a hue to match Root's own. The situation was slipping away from him, and he knew it. Even Chick's Verbal and the other sprites were sidling out from behind their leader. I am still in charge here, Julius, so hand over those discs, or I will have you detained.
Oh, really? You and whose army? Oh, really? You and whose army?
For a second, Cudgeon's face glowed with the old pomposity. It evaporated the moment he noticed the conspicuous lack of officers at his shoulders.
That's right, snickered Foley. You ain't acting commander anymore. The call came through from below. You got an appointment with the council, and I don't think it's to offer you a seat.
It was probably Foley's grin that drove Cudgeon over the edge. Give me those discs! He roared, pinning Foley to the operations shuttle. Root was tempted to let them wrestle for a while, but now wasn't the time to indulge himself.
Naughty, naughty,
he said, pointing his index finger at Cudgeon.
No one beats Foley but me.
Foley paled.
Careful with that finger, you're still wearing the...
Root's thumb accidentally brushed his knuckle, opening a tiny gas valve. The release gas propelled a tranquilized dart through the latex fingertip and straight into Cudgeon's neck. The acting commander, soon to be private, sank to the stone. Foley rubbed his neck.
Nice shot, Commander.
I don't know what you're talking about. Total accident. Forgot all about the fake finger. There are several precedents, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. Unfortunately, Cudgeon will be unconscious for several hours. By the time he awakens, all the excitement will be over.
Shame.
Root allowed himself a fleeting grin. Then it was back to business.
Is the gold here?
Yep, they just inserted it.
Good.
He called to Cudgeon's sheepish troops.
Get it loaded on a hover trolley and send it in. Any trouble and I'll feed you your wings. Understand?
I'll let you know. No one actually replied, but it was understood. No doubt about it.
Good. Now hop to it.
Root disappeared into the operations shuttle, fully clopping behind him. The commander shut the door firmly.
Is it armed?
The centaur flicked a few important-looking switches on the main console.
It is now.
I want it launched as soon as possible.
He glanced through the laser-proof reflector glass.
We're down to minutes here. I see sunlight poking through.
Foley bent to his keyboard in earnest.
The magic is breaking up. In 15 minutes, we're going to be in the middle of overground daytime. The neutrino streams are losing their integrity.
I see,
said Root, which was basically a lie again.
Okay, I don't see, but I do get 15 minutes, Bit. That gives you 10 minutes to get Captain Short out of there. After that, we're going to be sitting ducks for the entire human race.
Foley activated yet another camera. This one was linked to the hover trolley. He ran a finger experimentally across the trackpad. The trolley shot forward, almost decapitating Shik's Verbeau.
Nice driving,
muttered Root.
Better get up the steps.
Foley didn't even look up from his computers.
Automatic clearance compensator. A 5-foot collar. No problems.
Root spared him with a glare.
You do that just to annoy me, don't you?
Foley shrugged his shoulders.
I might.
Yes, well, count yourself lucky my other fingers aren't loaded. Get my meaning?
Yes, sir.
Good. Now let's bring Captain Short home.
Holly hovered beneath the portico. Orange shards of lights stripped the blue. The time stop was breaking up. There were only minutes left before Root blue-rinsed the whole place. Foley's voice buzzed in her earpiece.
Okay, Captain Short. Gold's on the way. Be ready to move.
We don't bargain with kidnappers, said Holly, surprised. What's going on here?
Nothing,
replied Foley casually.
Straightforward exchange. Gold goes in, you come out, we send in the missile. Big blue bang, and it's all over.
Does Fowl know about the biobomb?
Yep, knows about it. Claims he can escape the time field.
That's impossible.
Correct.
But they'll all be killed.
Big deal,
retorted Foley, and Holly could almost see him shrug.
It's what you get when you mess with the people.
Holly was torn. There was no doubt that Fowl was in a danger to the civilized world. Very few tears would be shed over his body. But the girl, Juliet, she was an innocent. She deserved a chance. Holly descended to an altitude of 6.5 feet. Head height for Butler. The humans had congregated in the wreckage that used to be the hallway. There was disunity between them. The LEP officer could sense it. Holly glared accusingly at Artemis. Have you told them? Artemis returned her stare. Told them what? Yes, Fairy, told us what? Echoed Juliet belligerently, still a bit miffed over the mesmerizing. Was in Stockholm, some people. Yeah. I'm glad you like it, Weaver. Don't play dumb, Fowl. You know what I'm talking about. Artemis never could play dumb for very long. Yes, Captain Short, I do. The biobomb. Your concern would be touching if it extended to myself. Nevertheless, do not upset yourself. Everything is proceeding according to plan. According to plan? Gasped Holly, pointing to the devastation surrounding them. Was this part of the plan? And Butler almost getting killed all part of the plan? No, Artemis admitted. The troll was a slight blip, but irrelevant to the overall scheme. Holly resisted the urge to punch the pale human again, turning instead to Butler. Listen to reason. For heaven's sake, you cannot escape the time field. It has never been done. Butler's features could have been etched in stone.
If Artemis says it can be done, then it can.
But your sister, are you willing to risk her life out of loyalty to a felon?
Artemis is no felon, miss. He is a genius. Now please remove yourself from my sideline. I am monitoring the main entrance.
Holly buzzed up 20 feet. You're crazy, all of you. In 5 minutes you'll all be dust, don't you realize? Artemis sighed. You've had your answer, Captain. Now please, This is a delicate stage in the proceedings. Proceedings? It's kidnapping. At least have the guts to call it what it is.
Artemis's patience was beginning to fray. Butler, do we have any tranquilizer hypodermics left? The giant manservant nodded, but didn't speak. At that precise moment, if the order came to sedate, he wasn't sure if he would or could. Luckily, Artemis's attention was diverted by activity in the avenue.
It would seem the LEP have capitulated. Butler, supervise the delivery, but stay alert. Our fairy friends are not above trickery. You're one to talk, muttered Holly.
Butler hurried to the demolished doorway, checking the load and catch on his Sigsar 9mm. He was almost grateful for some military activity to distract him from his dilemma. In situations like these, training took over. There was no room for sentiment. A fine haze of dust still hung in the air. Butler squinted through it into the avenue beyond. The fairy filters rigged over his eyes revealed that there were no warm bodies approaching. There was, however, a large trolley seemingly driving itself up to the front door. It was floating on a cushion of shimmering air. Doubtless Master Artemis would have understood the physics of this machine. All Butler cared about was whether or not he could disassemble it. The trolley jumped into the first step.
Automatic compensator, my foot.
It bumped into the first step. Snorted Root.
Yeah, replied Foley. I'm working on it.
It's the ransom,
Shouted Butler. Artemis tried to quell the excitement rising in his chest. This was not the time to allow emotions to enter the equation.
Check for booby traps.
Butler stepped cautiously onto the porch. Shards of disintegrated gargoyle lay scattered beneath his feet.
No hostiles. Seems to be self-repelled.
The trolley lurched over the steps.
I don't know who's driving this thing, but he could do with a few lessons.
Butler bent low to the ground, scanning the trolley's underside.
No explosive devices visible.
He extracted a sweeper from his pocket, extending the telescopic aerial.
No bugs either. Nothing detectable at any rate. What do we have here?
Uh-oh,
said Foley.
It's a camera.
Butler reached in, pulling the fisheye lens out by the cable.
Nighty-night, gentlemen.
In spite of the load it carried, the trolley responded easily to Butler's touch, gliding across the threshold into the lobby. It stood there, humming softly, as though waiting to be unloaded. Now that the moment had come, Artemis was almost afraid to seize it. It was hard to believe that after all these months, his wicked scheme was minutes away from fruition. Of course, these last few minutes were the vital ones and the most dangerous. "Open it," he said at last, surprised at the tremble in his own voice. It was an irresistible instant. Juliet approached tentatively, spangled eyes wide. Even Holly closed the throttle a notch, dropping until her feet brushed the marble tiling. Butler unzipped the black tarpaulin, dragging it back across the cargo. Nobody said a thing. Artemis imagined that somewhere the 1812 overture was playing. Anyway, the gold sat there stacked in shining rows. It seemed to have an aura, a warmth, but also an inherent danger. There were a lot of people willing to die or kill for the unimaginable wealth this gold could bring. Holly was mesmerized. Fairies have an affinity for minerals. They are of the earth, but gold was their favorite. Its luster, its allure. "They paid," she breathed. "I can't believe it." "Neither can I," murmured Artemis. "Butler, is it real?" Butler hefted a bar from the stack. He dug the tip of a throwing knife into the ingot, gouging out a small sliver.
It's real, all right,
he said, holding the scraping up to the light.
This one, at any rate.
Good, very good. Begin unloading it, would you? We'll send the trolley back out with Captain Short. Hearing her name dispelled Holly's gold fever.
Artemis, give it up. No human has ever succeeded in keeping fairy gold, and they've been trying for centuries. The Lep will do anything to protect their property.
Artemis shook his head, amused.
I've told you. Holly took him by the shoulders. You cannot escape. Don't you understand?
The boy returned her gaze coolly.
I can escape, Holly. Look in my eyes and tell me that I can't.
So she did. Captain Holly Short gazed into her captor's blue-black eyes, and she saw the truth in there. And for a moment she believed it.
There's still time, she said desperately. There must be something. I have magic.
A crease of annoyance wrinkled the boy's brow.
I hate to disappoint you, Captain, but there is absolutely nothing.
Artemis paused, his gaze tugged momentarily upstairs to the converted loft. Perhaps, he thought, do I really need all this gold? And was his conscience not needling him? Leeching some of the sweetness from his victory? He shook himself. Stick to the plan, stick to the plan. No emotion. Artemis felt a familiar hand on his shoulder. Everything all right?
Yes, Butler. Keep unloading. Get Juliet to help. I need to talk to Captain Short.
Oh, you have a great day as well, Gardel.
Are you sure there's nothing wrong?
Artemis sighed.
No, old friend, I'm not sure. But it's too late now.
Butler nodded, returning to his task. Juliet toddled along behind him, like a terrier.
Now, Captain, about your magic. What about it?
Holly's eyes were hooded with suspicion.
What would I have to do to buy a wish?
Holly glanced at the trolley.
Well, that depends. What do you have to bargain with?
Root was not what you'd call relaxed. Increasingly wide bands of yellow light were poking through the blue. Minutes left. Minutes. His migraine was not helped by the pungent cigar feeding toxins into his system.
All non-essential personnel been evacuated. Unless they've sneaked back in since the last time you asked me. Not now, Foley. Believe me, now is not the time. Anything from Captain Short? Nope, we lost video after the troll thing. I'd guess the battery's ruptured. We'd better get that helmet off her ASAP or the radiation will fry her brain. That'd be a pity after all this work.
Foley returned to his console. A red light began pulsing gently.
Wait, motion center. We got activity by the main entrance.
Root crossed to the screens.
Can you enhance it? No problem.
Foley punched in the coordinates, blowing it up to 400%. Root sat down on the nearest chair.
Am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? You sure are, Foley chuckled. This is even better than a suit of armor.
Holly was coming out, with the gold. Retrieval was on her in half a second.
Let's get you out of the danger zone, Captain,
urged us Wright, catching Holly by the elbow. Another ran a rad sensor over her helmet.
We've got a power breach here, Captain. We need to get your head sprayed immediately.
Holly opened her mouth to protest and had it instantly filled with rad suppressant foam.
Can't this wait?
She sputtered.
Sorry, Captain. Time is of the essence. The commander wants a debriefing before we detonate.
Holly was rushed towards the mobile ops unit, her feet barely touching the ground. All around her, retrieval cleaners scanned the grounds for any trace of the siege. Techies dismantled the field dishes, making ready to pull the plug. Grunts steered the trolley up towards the portal. It was imperative that everything be relocated to a safe distance before the biobomb went in. Root was waiting on the steps.
Holly,
he blurted.
Captain, you made it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
And the gold, too. This is a real feather in your cap.
Well, not all, Commander. About half, I think.
Root nodded.
No matter. We'll have the rest soon enough.
Holly wiped rad foam from her brow.
I've been thinking about that, sir. Fowl made a mistake. He never ordered me not to re-enter the house. Seeing as he brought me in there in the first place, the invitation still stands. I could go in and mind wipe the occupants. We could hide the gold in the walls and do another time stop tomorrow night.
No, Captain.
But, sir... Root's features regained whatever tension they'd lost.
No, Captain. The Council is not about to hold off for some kidnapping mudman. It's just not going to happen. I have my orders. And believe me, they're written in stone.
Holly trailed Root into the mobile. But the girl, sir, she's an innocent.
Casualty of war. She threw her lot in with the wrong side. Nothing can be done for her now.
Holly was incredulous. A casualty of war? How can you say that? A life is a life. Root spun sharply, grasping her by the shoulders.
You did what you could, Holly, he said. No one could have done more. You even retrieved most of the ransom. You're suffering from what humans call Stockholm Syndrome. You have bonded with your captors. Don't worry, it will pass. But those people in there, they know about us. Nothing can save them now.
Foley looked up from his calculations.
Not true, technically. Welcome back, by the way.
Holly couldn't spare even a second to return the greeting. What do you mean, not true?
I'm fine, seeing as you asked.
Foley,
shouted Root and Holly in unison. Well, like the book said, if the Mudman gold can gather, in spite of magic or fairy glamour, then that gold is his to keep until he lies in eternal sleep. So, if he lives, he wins. It's that simple. Not even the council will go against the book.
Root scratched his chin.
Should I be worried?
Foley laughed mirthlessly.
No, those guys are good as dead.
As good as isn't good enough.
Is that an order?
Affirmative, soldier.
I'm not a soldier,
said Foley and pressed the button. Butler was more than a little surprised.
You gave it back?
Artemis nodded. About half. We still have quite a nest egg. About $15 million at today's market prices. Butler usually wouldn't ask, but this time he had to.
Why, Artemis? Can you tell me?
I suppose so. The boy smiled. I felt we owed the captain something for services rendered.
Is that all?
Artemis nodded. No need to talk about the wish. It could be perceived as weakness. Said Butler, smarter than he looked. Now we should celebrate, enthused Artemis, deftly changing the subject. Some champagne, I think. The boy strode to the kitchen before Butler's gaze could dissect him. By the time the others caught up, Artemis had already filled 3 glasses with Dom Perignon. I'm a minor, I know, but I'm sure Mother wouldn't mind, just this once. Butler felt that something was afoot. Nevertheless, he took the crystal flute offered to him. Juliet looked at her big brother. Is this okay?
I suppose so.
He took a breath.
You know I love you, don't you, sis?
Juliet scowled. Something else that the local louts found very endearing. She smacked her brother on the shoulder. You're so emotional for a bodyguard. Butler looked his employer straight in the eye.
You want us to drink this, don't you, Artemis?
Artemis met his gaze squarely. Yes, I do, Butler. Without another word, Butler drained his glass. Juliet followed suit. The manservant tasted the tranquilizer immediately, and although he would have had ample time to snap Artemis Fowl's neck, he didn't. No need for Juliet to be distressed in her final moments. Artemis watched his friends sink to the floor. A pity to deceive them, but if they had been alerted to the plan, their anxiety could have counteracted the sedative. He gazed at the bubbles swirling in his own glass. Time for the most audacious step in his scheme. With only the barest hint of hesitation, he swallowed the tranquilizer-laced champagne. Artemis waited calmly for the drug to take hold of his system. He didn't have to wait long, since each dose had been calculated according to body weight. As his thoughts began to swirl, it occurred to him he might never awaken again. It's a bit late for doubts, he chided himself, and sank into unconsciousness.
She's away, said Foley, leaning back from the console. It's out of my hands now.
They followed the missile's progress through polarized windows. It really was a remarkable piece of equipment. Because its main weapon was light, the fallout could be focused to an exact radius. The radioactive element used in the core was selenium-2, which had a half-life of 14 seconds. This effectively meant that Foley could tune the biobomb to Blue-Rent's only foul manner, and not one blade of grass more. Plus, the building would be radiation-free in under a minute. In the event that a few selenium flares refused to be focused, they would be contained by the time field. Murder made easy.
The flight path is pre-programmed,
Explained Foley, though no one was paying a blind bit of attention.
She'd sail into the lobby and detonate. The casing firing mechanisms are plastic alloy and will completely disintegrate. Clean as a whistle.
Root and Hawley followed the bomb's arc. As predicted, it swooped through the decimated doorway, without knocking so much as a sliver of stone from the medieval walls. Hawley switched her attention to the missile's nose cam. For a moment she caught a glimpse of the grand hallway where she had, until recently, been a prisoner. It was empty, not a human in sight. Maybe, she thought, just maybe. Then she looked at Foley and the technology at his fingertips, and realized that the humans were as good as dead. The biobomb detonated. A blue orb of condensed light crackled and spread, filling every corner of the manor with its deadly rays. Flowers withered, insects shriveled, and fish died in their tanks. Not one cubic millimeter was spared. Artemis Fowl and his cohorts could not have escaped. It was impossible. Ollie sighed, turning away from the already dwindling blue rinse. For all his grand designs, Artemis had been a mere mortal in the end, and for some reason she mourned his passing. Root was more pragmatic.
Okay, suit up, full blackout gear. It's perfectly safe, said Foley. Didn't you ever listen in school?
The commander snorted.
I trust science about as far as I could throw you, Foley. Radiation has a habit of hanging around when certain scientists have assured us it has dissipated. No one steps outside the unit without blackout gear. So that counts you out, Foley. Only bipedal suits. Anyway, I want you on the monitors, just in case.
In case of what? Wondered Foley. But he didn't comment. Save it for an I told you so later. Root turned to Hawley.
Are you ready, Captain?
Going back in. The idea of identifying 3 cadavers didn't appeal to Hawley, but she knew it was her duty. She was the only one with first-hand knowledge of the interior. Yes, sir. On my way. Hawley selected a blackout suit from the rack, pulling it on over her jumpsuit. As per training, she checked the gauge before tugging the vulcanized cowl. A dip in pressure would indicate a rip, which could prove fatal in the long term. Root lined up the insertion team at the perimeter. The remains of Retrieval 1 were about as eager to insert themselves into the manor as they would be to juggle Atlantean stink bombs.
You're certain the big one is gone?
Yes, Captain Kelp, he's gone, one way or another. Trouble wasn't convinced, because that's one mean human.
Because that's one mean human. I think he has magic of his own.
Corporal Grubb giggled and got an immediate clip on the ear for himself. He muttered something about telling Mommy and quickly strapped on his helmet. Root felt his complexion redden.
Let's move out. Your mission is to locate and recover the bullion. Watch for booby traps. I didn't trust Fowl when he was alive, and I definitely don't trust him now that he's dead.
The words booby traps got everyone's attention. The idea of a bouncing Betty anti-personnel mine exploding at head height was enough to dispel any nonchalance in the troops. No one built weapons of cruelty like mudmen. As the junior recon officer, Hawley was on point. And even though there weren't supposed to be any hostiles in the manor, she found her gun hand automatically straying to the Neutrino 2000. The mansion was eerily quiet, with only the fizzle of the last few selenium flares to alleviate the stillness. Death was there too, in the silence. The manor was a cradle of death. Ollie could smell it. Behind those medieval walls lay the bodies of 1,000,000 insects, and under its floors the cooling corpses of spiders and mice. They approached the doorway tentatively. Holly swept the area with an X-ray scanner. Nothing under the flagstones but dirt, and a nest of dead money spiders. "Clear," she said into her microphone. "I'm going in. Foley, have you got your ears on?"
I'm right there with you, darling, replied the centaur. Unless you step on a landmine, in which case I'm way back in the operations room.
"Are you getting any thermals?"
Not after the blue rinse. We have residual heat signatures all over the place. Mostly selenium flares. It won't calm down for a couple of days.
"But no radiation, right?"
That's right.
Root snorted in disbelief. Over the headsets, it sounded like an elephant sneezing.
Looks like we're gonna have to sweep this house the old-fashioned way, he grumbled.
Make it quick, advised Foley. I give it 5 minutes tops before Fowl Manor rejoins the world at large.
Holly stepped through what used to be the doorway. The chandelier swung gently from the concussive force of the missile's detonation, but otherwise everything was as she remembered it.
"The gold is downstairs, in my cell."
Nobody answered, not in words. Someone did manage a retch right into the microphone. Holly spun around. Trouble was doubled over, clutching his stomach.
I don't feel so good,
He groaned, a tad unnecessarily considering the pool of vomit all over his boots. Corporal Grubb took a breath, possibly to utter a sentence containing the word mommy. What came out was a jet of concentrated bile. Unfortunately, Grubb didn't have the opportunity to open his visor before the illness struck. It was not a pretty sight. Said Holly, pressing the corporal's visor release button. A tsunami of regurgitated rations flooded over Grubb's blackout suit.
Oh, for heaven's sake,
muttered Root, elbowing past the brothers. He didn't get very far. One step over the threshold, and he was throwing up with the rest of them. Holly pointed her helmet cam at the stricken officers. "What the hell is going on here, Foley?"
I'm searching, hold on.
Holly could hear computer keys being punched furiously.
Okay, sudden vomiting, spatial nausea. Oh no.
"What?" asked Holly, but she already knew. Maybe she always had.
It's the magic,
blurted Foley, words barely decipherable in his excitement.
They can't enter the house until Fowl is dead. It's like an extreme allergic reaction. That means... unbelievable, that means...
They made it, completed Holly. He's alive. Artemis Fowl is alive.
Oh, darn it,
groaned Root, and heaved another quart of vomit onto the terracotta tiles. Holly went on alone. She had to see for herself. If Fowl's corpse was there, it would be with the gold. Of that she was certain. The same family portraits glared down at her, but now they seemed smug rather than austere. I'm not quite sure what that word is, but I get the meaning. Holly was tempted to loose a few blasts into them with the Neutrino 2000, but that would be against the rules. If Artemis Fowl had beaten them, then that was it. There would be no recriminations. She descended the stairway to her cell. The door was still swinging slightly from the biobomb concussion. A selenium flare ricocheted around the room like a trapped bolt of blue lightning. Holly stepped inside, half afraid of what she might or might not see. There was nothing. Nothing dead at any rate, just gold. 200 ingots approximately, piled on the mattress of her cot. Nice, neat military rows. Good old Butler. The only human ever to take on a troll and win. "Commander, are you receiving? Over."
Affirmative, Captain. Body count?
"Negative on the body, sir. I found the rest of the ransom." There was a long silence.
Leave it, Holly. You know the rules. We're pulling out.
"But, sir, there must be a way." Foley broke into the conversation.
But nothing, Captain. I'm counting down the seconds until daylight here, and I don't like our odds if we have to exit at high noon.
Holly sighed. It made sense. The people could choose their exit time as long as they left before the field disintegrated. It just galled her to think that they'd been beaten by a human. An adolescent human at that. She took a last look around the cell. A big ball of hatred had been born here, she realized.
and would have to be dealt with sooner or later. Polly jammed her pistol back into its holster. Preferably sooner. Bob was the winner this time, but someone like him wouldn't be able to rest on his laurels. He would be back with some other money-making scheme, and when he arrived, he would find Holly Short waiting for him with a big gun and a smile. The ground was soft by the time-stop perimeter. Half a millennium's bad drainage from the medieval walls had transformed the foundations into a virtual bog. So that was where mulch surfaced. The soft ground wasn't the only reason for choosing that exact spot. The other reason was the smell. A good tunnel dwarf can pick up the scent of gold through half a mile of granite bedrock. Mulch Diggums had one of the best noses in the business. The hover trolley floated virtually unguarded. Two of Retrieval's finest were stationed beside the recovered ransom, but at the moment they were having a little giggle at their stricken commander.
"You can't have chocolate, can't eat it, Chicks."
Chicks nodded, mimicking Root's spewing technique. Chick's verbal pantomime antics provided the perfect cover for a spot of pilfering. Mulch gave his tubes a clearing before clambering from the tunnel. Last thing he needed was for a sudden burst of gas to alert the Lep to his presence. He needn't have worried. He could have slapped Chick's verbal in the face with a wet stinkworm, and the sprite wouldn't have noticed. In a matter of seconds, he had transferred 24 ingots into the tunnel. It was the easiest job he had ever pulled. Mulch had to stifle a giggle as he dropped the last 2 bars down the hole. Julius had really done him a favor, getting him involved in this whole affair. Things couldn't have worked out much better. He was free as a bird, rich, and best of all, presumed dead. By the time the Lep realized that the gold was missing, Mulch Diggums would be half a continent away. If they realized at all. The dwarf lowered himself into the ground. It would take several trips to move his treasure trove, but it would be worth the delay. With this kind of money, he could take early retirement. He would have to completely disappear, of course, but a plan was already forming in his devious mind. He would live above ground for a spell, masquerade as a human dwarf with an aversion to light. Perhaps buy a penthouse with thick blinds. In Manhattan, perhaps, or Monte Carlo. It might seem odd, of course, a dwarf shutting himself away from the sun. But then again, he would be an obscenely rich dwarf, and humans would accept any story, however outlandish, when there's something in it for them. Preferably something green that folds. Artemis could hear a voice calling his name. There was a face behind the voice, but it was blurred, hard to make out. His father, perhaps? Father? The word was strange in his mouth, unused, rusty. Artemis opened his eyes. Butler was leaning over him.
Artemis, you're awake.
Ah, Butler, it's you. Artemis got to his feet, head spinning with the effort. He expected Butler's hand at his elbow to steady him. It didn't come. Juliet was lying on a chase lounge, dribbling into the cushions. Obviously, the draft hadn't worn off yet. It was just sleeping pills, Butler, harmless. The manservant's eyes had a dangerous glint.
Explain yourself.
Artemis rubbed his eyes. Later, Butler, I'm feeling a bit... Butler stepped into his path.
Artemis, my sister is lying drugged on that couch. She was almost killed, so explain yourself now.
Artemis realized that he'd been given an order. He considered being offended, but then decided that perhaps Butler was right. He had gone too far. I didn't tell you about the sleeping pills because you'd fight them. It's only natural, and it was imperative to the plan that we all go to sleep immediately.
The plan?
Artemis lowered himself into a comfortable chair. The time field was the key to this whole affair. It's the Lep's ace in the hole. It's what made them unbeatable for all these years. Any incident can be contained. That and the biobomb make a formidable combination.
So why did we have to be drugged?
Artemis smiled. Look out the window, don't you see? They're gone. It's over. Butler glanced through the net curtains. The light was bright and clear, not a hint of blue. Nevertheless, the manservant was unimpressed.
They're gone for now. They'll be back tonight, I guarantee it.
No, that's against the rules. We beat them. That's it. Game over. Butler raised an eyebrow.
The sleeping pills, Artemis.
Not to be distracted, I see. Butler's answer was an implacable silence. The sleeping pills, very well. I had to think of a way to escape the time field. I trawled through the book, but there was nothing, not a clue. The people themselves have not yet developed a way. So I went back to their Old Testament, back when their lives and ours were intertwined. You know the stories, elves that made shoes during the night, sprites that cleaned houses. Back when we coexisted to a certain extent, the magical favors in exchange for their fairy forts. The big one, of course, was Santa Claus.
Butler's eyebrows nearly jumped off the front of his face.
Santa Claus?
Artemis raised his palms. I know. I was a tad skeptical myself, but apparently our little corporate image, Santa Claus, is not descended from a Turkish saint. He is a shadow of Santa Claus, the third king of the Frond Elfin dynasty. He is known as San the Deluded.
Not a great title, as titles go.
Admittedly. Ducasse thought that the greed of the mud people in his kingdom could be assuaged by distributing lavish gifts. He would marshal all the great wizards once a year, and have them throw up a great time stop over vast regions. Flocks of sprites would be sent out to deliver the presents while the humans were asleep. Of course, it didn't work. Human greed can never be assuaged, especially not by gifts.
Butler frowned. What if the humans, what if we had woken up?
Ah, yes, excellent question. The heart of the matter. We wouldn't wake up. That is the nature of the time stop. Whatever your state of consciousness going in, that's how you stay. You can neither wake up nor fall asleep. You must have noticed the fatigue in your bones these last few hours, that your mind would not let you sleep.
Butler nodded. Things were getting clearer in a roundabout sort of way.
So my theory was that the only way to escape the time field was to simply fall asleep. Our own consciousness was all that kept us imprisoned.
You're risking an awful lot on a theory, Artemis.
Not just on a theory, we did have a test subject.
Who? Ah, Angeline.
Yes, my mother. Because of her narcotic-induced slumber, she moved with the natural order of time, unhindered by the time field. If she had not, I would have simply surrendered to the LEP and submitted to their mind wipe.
Butler snorted. He doubted.
So, because we could not fall asleep naturally,
I simply administered us all a dose of mother's pills. Simple.
you cut it pretty fine, though. Another minute.
Agreed, the boy nodded. Things were tense there at the end. It was necessary in order to double bluff the LEP.
He paused so that Butler could process the information.
Well, am I forgiven?
Butler sighed. On the chase lounge, Juliet snored like a drunken sailor. He smiled suddenly.
Yes, Artemis. All is forgiven. Just one thing.
Yes?
Never again. Fairies are too human.
You're right, said Artemis, the crow's feet deepening around his eyes.
Never again. We shall restrict ourselves to more tasteful ventures in the future. Legal, I can't promise.
Butler nodded. It was close enough.
Now, young master, shouldn't we check on your mother?
Artemis grew paler, if that were possible. Could the captain have reneged on her promise? She would certainly be entitled to.
Yes, I suppose we should. Let Juliet rest. She's earned it.
He cast his eyes upward, along the stairs. It had been too much to hope for that he could trust the fairy. After all, he had held her captive against her will. He berated himself silently. Imagine parting with all those millions for the promise of a wish. Oh, the gullibility. Then the loft door opened. Butler drew his weapon instantly.
Artemis, behind me. Intruders.
The boy waved him away.
No, Butler, I don't think so.
His heart pounded in his ears, blood pulsed in his fingertips. Could it be? Could it possibly be? A figure appeared on the stairs, wraith-like in a toweled robe, her hair wet from the shower.
"Artie," she called. "Artie, where are you?"
Artemis wanted to answer. He wanted to race up the grand stairway, arms outstretched, but he couldn't. His cerebral functions had deserted him. Angeline Fowl descended, one hand resting lightly on the banister. Artemis had forgotten how graceful his mother was. Her bare feet skipped over the carpeted steps, and soon she was standing before him.
"Morning, darling,"
She said brightly, as though it were just another day.
"Mother." "Well, give me a hug."
Artemis stepped into his mother's embrace. It was warm and strong. She was wearing perfume. He felt like the boy he was.
"I'm sorry, Artie."
She whispered into his ear.
"Sorry for what?" "For everything. For the last few months. I haven't been myself. But things are going to change. Time to stop living in the past."
Artemis felt a tear on his cheek. He wasn't sure whose tear it was.
"And I don't have a present for you."
"A present?" said Artemis.
"Of course," sang his mother, spinning him around. "Don't you know what day it is?"
Day?
It's Christmas Day, you silly boy. Christmas Day. Presents are traditional, are they not?
Yes, thought Artemis. Traditional. Santa Claus.
And look at this place, drab as a mausoleum. Butler."
The manservant hurriedly pocketed his cigar. Yes, ma'am.
"Get on the phone to Brown Thomas, the platinum set number. Reopen my account. Tell Helene I want a Yuletide makeover. The works.
Yes, ma'am. The works.
Oh, and wake up Juliet. I want my things moved into the main bedroom. That attic is far too dusty."
Yes, ma'am. Right away, ma'am.
Angeline Fowl linked her son's arm. "Now, Artie, I want to know everything. First of all, what happened here?" "Remodeling," said Artemis. "The old doorway was riddled with damp."
Angeline frowned, completely unconvinced.
"I see. And how about school? Have you decided on a career?"
While his mouth answered these everyday questions, Artemis' mind was in turmoil. He was a boy again. His life was going to change utterly. His plans would have to be much more devious than usual if they were to escape his mother's attention. But it would be worth it. Angeline Fowl was wrong. She had brought him a Christmas present. I decided, fuck it, I'm over my not being Sebastian Shopping, so I decided to link by phone. Fair enough, Nana. All we have left is the epilogue. Now that you have reviewed the case file, you must realize what a dangerous creature this Fowl is. There is a tendency to romanticize Artemis, to attribute to him qualities that he does not possess. The fact that he used his wish to heal his mother is not a sign of affection. He did it simply because the social services were already investigating his case, and it was only a matter of time before he was put into care. He kept the existence of the people quiet only so that he could continue to exploit them over the years, which he did on several occasions. His one mistake was leaving Captain Short alive. Ollie became the LEP's foremost expert in the Artemis Fowl cases, and was invaluable in the fight against the people's most feared enemy. This fight was to continue across several decades. Ironically, the greatest triumph for both protagonists was the time they were forced to cooperate during the Goblin insurgents. But that's another story. Report compiled by Dr. J. Argon B. Seitch for the LEP Academy files. Details are 94% accurate, 6% unavoidable extrapolation. The Well, we blew through the last half of the book much more quickly than I thought we were. Given how long the previous stream went, I think the previous stream went for almost 5 hours. But yes, that was the entirety of the first Artemis Fowl book by Eowyn Colfer. Well. I was like the fact that his motivation was always for his parents, not that it excuses his actions, but it does contextualize them. Yeah, if you wanted to look at it from a very skewed yet slightly accurate perspective, you could just say these books are all just a story of how a young boy went through unimaginable things just to live out a relatively normal life with his parents. But yes, an interesting series. I may come back and revisit the books. Maybe I'll do a read through of the entire second book for my 500 followers celebration stream. Look over there. He is still clearly an asshole. Yes, he is a criminally minded genius descended from a long line of criminally minded people. And yeah, he's kind of a dick to get what he needs, but he feels bad about it. At least to a degree. Yeah, no spoilers. This whole plot was driven by Artemis wanting to rescue his dad. Well, he doesn't know his dad's alive. Children can be sometimes massive assholes. Yes, he doesn't know if his father is alive. He's kind of given up hope at this point in the story. That's all I'll say on that. But yeah. We've only been going for like 3 hours. If you guys want, I could hop into a game for another hour or two. I would probably temporarily end the stream, change the category and the title, and then restart the stream just so that it would be a separate VOD with a separate title, because, Twitch is a bit silly that way. It won't let you change the title or what you're doing for the VOD itself unless you end the stream and then restart it. I suppose the question is, what should we play? I don't know. 3 hours seems a little short. Plus it smells lovely outside. It smells of rain. I'm not sure if it's raining, but it smells lovely. I love this smell. So, yeah. Artemis is absolutely a dick, like severely, but he does have a conscience. Not a great one, but a conscience. Yeah. Oh, you can put markers. Oh, I don't even know what that means. But yes, we do have a few options if you guys wanted to stick around. I could, play some more Monster Hunter World if you guys enjoyed watching me farm monster parts. And heck, if any of you own the game and wanted to join me, I'd be more than happy to have you, but, say lovey. Other than that, we could do something like Slay the Spire or Monster Train or, any of those like roguelite type games. Could just hop in and do a couple of treasure hunts and Sea of Thieves. That would kind of fit the theme of the book we just read, considering the fact that the entire thing was about stealing gold. Yeah, we could do whatever you guys want. A timer on the VOD. Gotcha. Let's see. How do I set up a poll again? Mute that. I'll just go and do it through the creator dashboard. That's the simplest way. Manage poll. New poll. Watch to play last part of the stream. Monster Hunter World Or Sea of Thieves. Should I throw the third option on there? Nah, I don't really want to get into any bigger games. I suppose I could throw Craftopia on there, but I doubt anyone will vote for it. There we go. Let's do a short poll here. All right. Let's see what the people's vote for. Hey, Corgi. You showed up right after we finished our book. Whoa, how you doing today? Good, I so hope. Let's see. Oh, Craftopia is getting more votes than I expected. Let's see how this turns out in the end. Will we slay the big old dino boys, or will we run around and... I don't know... do what basically is the inter-island equivalent of Minecraft? With mods? I guess. Hit things with swords, get materials, build better equipment, kill more things, go to stronger locations, find better things, build better equipment, whatever. But it is currently neck and neck between Monster Hunter World and Craftopia, so we'll see who comes out on top. The poll is halfway done. I don't know about Phasma. I don't know. I suppose, given the fact that I didn't absolutely hate it, I gave it a bit of a bad rap in my mind. But at the same time, yeah, the gameplay loop just isn't really for me. I'll do it for little bits and pieces here, maybe as parts of other people's streams. But I don't really go out of my way to play it. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, Craftopia. You're on an island. You slowly advance the level of technology of your world so that you can craft better weapons and tools to get better stuff. And then you go to stronger and stronger islands to scavenge together materials to build better stuff, to advance your technology further to get to stronger and stronger islands, and it just goes on for a while. You like those games? What are we gonna do? It's gonna be 50-50. If it doesn't become less balanced in the next 5 seconds, I'm gonna have to flip a coin. And it's a tie. Right, Monster Hunter World is heads, Craftopia's tails. Flip a coin. Heads. Sorry to disappoint, Crafty. We'll have to play Craftopia sometime in the future. But, yep. Yep, the Monster Hunter was the tiebreaker, because flipped a coin, and I declared the results before I even flipped it. Suppose I could have technically shown the coin flip on stream, like the web page, but I'd have to, like, put away my bookmark bars so you don't see all my dirty laundry, and, you know, you never know what things will be leaked on a spur-of-the-moment web thingy, web reveal. So, yeah. Let's turn off this calming, peaceful, lovely music. There we are. Now, I should just be able to straight up scooch you over here. Let's see. Do that. Go. Let's just create a new one. I don't really, whatever and what have you and what forth. But yeah, Corgi, how you doing today? How you doing, my lovely bean? Good, I hope. You'll notice that things look slightly different than last time, and that's because I've been doing a bit of the missions on my own, since, if we're going to keep playing this as a collab with the others, then I'm going to need to be a little bit further on in the quests, and I'll just do the quests again with them, because that way we can actually play together, because this game's a bit particular. But anyway, yes. He's got home from work now, waiting for steak to thaw. Ooh, steak. I've got to say, I've never been to a steakhouse that makes a better steak than my dad makes. Generally, the steaks at the steakhouse are too tough, or they're not seasoned properly, or they're not cooked to a good, tender, medium rare. Even if you ask for it, they'll always either go rare or they'll go well done. So, yeah, I've never been satisfied, not once, by a single restaurant steak. It's unfortunate, really. I think I need to produce a steak. Fair enough. Fair enough. Ah, yes, this one. This is the one we raided into last time that they were doing. Although it seemed like they'd been doing it a few times. I think. Well, at least some of the people in that stream had been doing it a few times. Yeah, we're gonna go and fight the big old lava boyo that crashed our ship that one time. Yes. Hey, Off-Brand, good to see you. How is you doing? Oh yes, I forgot to end this. Man, let's see. I'll update that. Yeah, I'll end the stream for a fraction of a second, then I'll be right back, just so that I can have the separate VODs. Because, yeah, I forgot to do that. So.